Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. Trevor Sikkema, Dalton Wasserman, here with you guys to recap all of the craziness that was a holiday edition of Week 17. Dalton, Christmas Day feels like forever ago at this point with how many NFL games and honestly just how many sporting events I feel like we've seen over the last 4 or 5 days. Those Christmas Day games feel like they are so far in the distant past, but they were all part of Week 17 here, which gave us a much clearer playoff picture. We know a lot more of the teams that are going to be in. We know what's on the line for Week 18, the final week of the regular season. We even have a new number one team at the top of the 2026 NFL Draft. How you doing, my friend? How was your holiday, first and foremost?
Fantastic. Nice and warm down in Florida, hanging out down in Clearwater, Tampa, all around there, about 75 degrees down there. And then I come back up to Cincinnati, and walking in here, it felt like the wind chill was about 10 degrees here. So certainly trying to get readjusted again to the cold weather up here, but all was good down there. And as you know, as we do on Christmas, Trevor, we just ate absolutely everything, man. So I feel about 10 pounds heavier, but we feel pretty good.
That's a sign of a great holiday. And we are what social media is calling in the void right now of the time between Christmas and New Year. Nobody knows what day it is. Nobody's got a strict diet or exercise plan that they're sticking to. Nobody knows whether they're working or not. Well, we're telling you guys that whether you're working or not, we're sitting here working. We're going to get you ready for Week 18 as we give you the top 5 graded players for every single team and every single game that we saw in Week 17, and a lot of the major takeaways as well. Some of these games didn't exactly have playoff implications on the line, but the NFL draft order changed a good amount, so we'll dip into that world. We'll take a look at that, but of course, we're going to give you all the PFF grades, all of the stats that we're going to see here, and if you guys want to see these for yourself, you can with a PFF Plus subscription. We may be in the void between Christmas and New Year's, but it's still the holiday season, which means the holiday sale is still going on, but not for long, guys. You can get 30% off a PFF Plus subscription right now with the promo code HOLIDAY30. It's not going to be around forever, so if you haven't taken advantage of it yet, now is a great time to do that because, man, when we get into the offseason, a lot of the free agency tools, the draft tools, being able to use that fully unlocked mock draft simulator is going to be fun. We know you guys are going to want to use it. You might as well get 30% off on it right now. Dalton, to start Week 17, we're not going to go all the way back to Christmas. We'll, go back and forth with some of the Saturday and the Christmas Day games and all that good stuff. But we have to start with Sunday Night Football, what felt like one of the best games of the year, not just the week, not just the holiday season, of the year between the Chicago Bears and the San Francisco 49ers. Final score in this one was 42-38. Offense often, defense not so much. But I'm going to sit here and look at it half glass or a glass half full approach and just marvel at two of the best offensive play callers that we had in the game in Ben Johnson and Kyle Shanahan cooking it up. Let's look at the top 5 graded players for the San Francisco 49ers as the winners here of this game. Luke Farrell, their tight end at the very top of the list with a 91.8. Jake Tonjes, their other tight end, not George Kittle, who was not playing in this game. Tight ends definitely showed up. He had an 86.7. Edge rusher Keon White with an 82.4. Offensive guard Spencer Bruford with a 81.5. Running back Christian McCaffrey, an 81.1. Brock Purdy in this game, an 81.9. Definitely have to break down his game a little bit further. Offensive tackle Darnell Wright on Chicago side of things, he was their top graded player with a 90.7. CJ Gardner-Johnson, an 87.8. Wide receiver Luther Burden, an 85.1. Looks like he avoided a major long-term injury on that last play of the game, which is great to see. I'm not sure if he'll be playing in Week 18, but we know that this team's in the playoffs, and we know from the game plan last night they'll definitely need him once they get into the postseason. Tight end Colson Loveland to 76.8. Running back DeAndre Swift to 74.3. And then Caleb Williams in this game, a 71.8. Dalton, what was your stat that told the story here for this one?
So for me, remember eons ago, Trevor, when people were debating whether Mac Jones should have been starting over Brock Purdy even when healthy? Well, he's shown you the last few weeks why he is better than somebody like Mac Jones, and it's because he can improvise it and he can create late in the play. When Brock Purdy got his average time to throw at 3 seconds or higher in this game, 22 dropbacks, 12 of 17, 145 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 80 88.2 passing grade, plus he had 4 carries for 21 yards and a touchdown. That ability to improvise, that ability to move outside the pocket, whether he's creating for himself or whether it's Kyle Shanahan with the bootleg games working off the play action, that is really what made the biggest difference in this game. Now, it helps obviously that the Bears had their second lowest pass rush grade of the season. Purdy was only sacked once, and that's because he held the ball a little bit too long on one of those bootlegs, but it was really Purdy's ability to create that magic outside the pocket. You saw it, especially the signature play, dancing out to his left, shaking defenders, throwing the touchdown pass to Kyle Juszczyk. That's the most memorable play of the night, but honestly, he did it all night, and he's been doing it for the last 3 weeks on plays that go for 3 seconds or longer. Over the last 3 weeks, he's got a 94.7 PFF grade. Brock Purdy's got a ton of time inside and outside of the pocket to work with, and he's making big plays happen in those scenarios. I think when you look at his ability right now to create, he's fully healthy. He's really dangerous as with this hot streak that he's on right now, distributing the ball to all sorts of weapons, even without George Kittle in this game. But his ability to improvise and work outside the pocket made a huge difference in this game.
Yeah, and this was a massive game where both of these teams were giving it their best because one seed was on the line. Now we're shaping up for the San Francisco 49ers to have quite the showdown with the Seattle Seahawks for the number 1 overall seed here in Week 18. So it's great to be able to set up that matchup. And you're right, Brock Purdy, it's so funny, right? Everybody talks about how he was the Mr. Irrelevant, right? He was the very last pick in the draft when he was coming out, and it's such a great story. Not only that he's become a starting quarterback in the league, but now he is a very highly paid starting quarterback in the league, and somebody who's capable of what we saw last night. And it goes to, I think that the reason why he's the Mr. Irrelevant in his draft class is because he just lacked the physical tools. He doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. In fact, I'd tell you he's probably got a bottom 10 arm in the NFL when it comes to those starting quarterbacks. His mobility, he's kind of a magician back there, but it's not like he's the fastest dude in the world. He's just not really athletically or physically gifted. But he's the story of the fact that if you are an elite processor, especially in chaos, sometimes that is just the most important trait that you could possibly have. And a lot of people would argue it is most of the time. And Brock Purdy is somebody who, he's not afraid to attempt any throw that he needs to. He is very cool, calm, and collected when it comes to pressure in his face, whether he's in the pocket, whether he's outside of the pocket. We saw, that crazy play where everything's getting broken down. He made 2 guys miss. He looks like he's about to scramble for the touchdown. 2 defenders, come right at him, and then he just goes, oh, okay. There it is, touchdown. Kyle Juszczyk, right in the corner, front pylon. And it's just like that ability to stay so calm when there's all sorts of bodies flying around him. It's unbelievable. So hats off to Brock Purdy for that. It was an awesome game to watch. I think the stat that told the story, though, because we got to remember, of course, I'm going to give the 49ers their praise. They won this game. But Chicago was right there, right? And we are a little bit harder of a throw from Caleb Williams away from them winning this game there at the buzzer. They were right there at the end, just like they were with the Packers a couple of weeks ago. And I think truly the stat that told the story with 2 elite offenses just playing so well last night was the fact that Caleb Williams, he had 7 negative 0.5 graded plays that we had, where Brock Purdy did not have nearly as many negative plays. Now, there's a good chance to remind everybody of how the PFF grading scale works. You have a player, and on every play we grade them on an execution level. If you kind of did your job, if it was a standard, hey, you did what was asked of you, no more, no less, you get a 0. It's a neutral grade there. But if there was an opportunity missed, a throw missed, you had the chance to seal a guy on a block or something like that, and you just missed it, you'll get a little bit of a negative play. And a negative 0.5, that's nothing catastrophic. It's more of, okay, there was something right in front of you that you could have done here that we expect that you should, being a starter, or just given the context of the expectations of what you're being asked to do, and you just didn't do it. And I think for Caleb, the boss man, Chris Collinsworth, was talking about this a little bit last night, where he was talking about some of the misses, some of the frustrating misses that he has. And I went back and I watched all of those, negatively graded plays that he had, which again, they weren't terrible plays. It was just a little bit below what could have been expectation for him. And it's the fact that he's still, on a couple of plays, just seeing things a little bit too late, where there's a receiver open here, and a half second goes by. Okay, now they're not open anymore. Now the defense is caught on. Now you're in a place where you can't deliver the throw exactly the way that you needed to. And so to me, in a game that was electric to watch and the margins felt pretty razor thin for these teams, it came down to, in my opinion, Caleb just having a handful of plays that he just didn't quite see it quick enough. And that doesn't mean that he can. In fact, I think that he has reduced the number of plays like that at a significant rate throughout this season. I mean, he had 4 big-time throws and no turnover-worthy plays in this game. Caleb had some incredible plays, but it's those little plays that he still just needs to recognize a little bit quicker. Convert that third down, make that throw, give themselves a third and short, whatever it is, that he still is just a little bit late on some of these throws. So that's part of his growth. That's part of where he's going. But I just felt as though there were too many of those last night to keep up with an offense that was incredibly potent and almost put up 500 yards on him in the 49ers last night.
No, I agree. I think with Caleb, it just comes down to consistency and accuracy. We know that he can work outside the pocket. We know he's a home run hitter, and he hit several home runs last night. It was a fantastic football game, and for the most part, he was really, really good. It's just going to be the continued development for him in games like this, and I'm really curious to see if he can carry more consistency into the postseason, right? Because that's really when it's going to matter, is not making those mistakes. When you have opportunities to create big plays and create them, especially on some easier throws, then you have to be able to take advantage of that, right? Because against really good defenses, the deep shots are not going to be there all the time. So I think it's just part of Caleb's development. Even in a high-scoring game like this, I think there's still more to improve upon, and that's a really good sign, I think, for the Chicago Bears.
Most impressive and most disappointing for you. Who you got?
For me, the most impressive, give me these 2 tight ends with George Kittle out, and he's such a huge factor for San Francisco. You look at the contributions of both Jake Tonjes and Luke Farrell in this game. Tonjes, 79.9 receiving grade, 7 catches, 60 yards, and an early touchdown, along with an 86.8 run blocking grade. That's what makes San Francisco's tight end group so good. It's the best group of blocking tight ends in the NFL. And then you look at Luke Farrell, 89.2 run blocking grade, 7 positively graded run blocks. It's a huge factor in why Christian McCaffrey had a season-high 140 rushing yards, because these 2 tight ends were able to step in and replace that production of George Kittle. And when you have all 3 of them out there, when Kittle's healthy, it's an absolutely lethal group. And then most disappointing for me, both of these teams have got to find a pass rush if they want to make a Super Bowl run. They're both bottom 7 in pass rush grade. They're both bottom 4 in pressure rate. You saw these 2 quarterbacks have so much success because they're 2 teams that cannot create pressure, especially with just rushing just 4. Robert Saleh doesn't rush much he doesn't blitz much, I should say, on the San Francisco side. Dennis Allen for Chicago does, but they weren't getting home last night, and they were struggling in coverage. So that's going to be the biggest question for me. Can either of these teams get after the quarterback come the postseason?
Yeah, for me, the most impressive was Christian McCaffrey. I think that some teams might look at a late bye week in the season and be like, oh, okay, this is a little unfair. We've got to play, like 13 games before we get our first bye week, because that's what the case was with the San Francisco 49ers. Their bye week was week 14. They were they were one of the last bye week teams. And I think that was exactly what the doctor ordered for some of these players, specifically Christian McCaffrey. I mean, Dalton McCaffrey looked like he was 24 years old out there. The juice that he had, the sharp cuts, the short area bursts, just like everything. He looked like a new man having a little bit of time off with that late bye week. So it was great to see. 23 carries for him, 140 yards, had 6 targets, 4 catches, 41 receiving yards, had that 81.1 overall grade. I mean, they leaned on him so much, and he had so many forced missed tackles. Again, the boss man Chris Collinsworth last night talked about how Christian McCaffrey is number 1 in the NFL at missed tackles forced this season, and he only continued to stack on that last night. So McCaffrey was fantastic, and I think the fact that the Niners had that late bye week, it feels like they are fresh, they're rejuvenated, they're ready to go. I mean, they obviously hunting for that number 1 overall seed. They might get an extra week off if they end up getting that, and if they do, man, this team has as good a chance as any to win the Super Bowl. And that is incredible to say when you are missing players like Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, who we thought the entire season hinged upon those guys being out there, and they haven't for the majority of the year. So pretty incredible. And then if you were watching the broadcast last night, they were talking about how Fred Warner is targeting the NFC Championship game to come back from that dislocated ankle. So, I mean, if he's able to be out there, even in a limited capacity for the NFC Championship, and they happen to win that game, and then they get another week off before they get to the Super Bowl, you put Fred Warner back on this team, look out. Like I said, they've got as good of a chance as anybody. The next game, let's talk about the Lions and the Vikings here as the next game. We're going to bounce around a little bit. It's not going to exactly be in order here, but Lions and the Vikings. So this is a Christmas Day game. Minnesota ends up winning this one 23-10. Lions eliminated with the loss here, and we'll sort of get into how the Lions looked and the outlook for them getting into the offseason here. But the top-graded players for Minnesota here in this one, edge rusher Dallas Turner was their top-graded player with an 83.6. Linebacker Blake Cashman, an 81.2. Safety Harrison Smith, a 79.7. Safety Jay Ward, a 77.7. And then cornerback Byron Murphy rounding it out at number 5 with a 76.6. Dalton, it's not often that you get a double-digit win when your quarterback, Max Brosmer, has a 38.3 overall PFF grade. But somehow that's exactly what happened here. On Detroit's side of things, edge rusher Aiden Hutchinson, as he often is, was their top-graded player with a 90.6. Safety Daniel Thomas with a 77.9. Offensive tackle Penei Sewell, a 76.0. Edge rusher Derek Barnes, a 75.7. And then linebacker Jack Campbell at number 5 with a 75.8. Jared Goff in this game, a 46.6 overall grade. Dalton, what was your stat that told the story?
Look, to be honest, Trevor, the story of the Lions' downfall this season to me is opposing defenses stacking the box, stacking the line of scrimmage, and basically saying to Dan Campbell, please go ahead and beat us with Jared Goff because we don't think you can do it. Now, we've seen them lose games with Jared Goff playing well. Think about the shootout they played in L.A. with the Rams. You think about even the Pittsburgh game last week where he played relatively well and just couldn't finish off that last drive. But this game right here, the Lions, 68 rushing yards on 30 carries, okay? 8 yards before contact, 0 explosive runs for the first time this season. They are now 0-8. They're 0-8 when they have less than 100 designed rushing yards. They are 8-0 when they get over that mark. It is that simple. The Lions' ability or inability to run the football is going to decide their fate every single week. And I have to applaud Brian Flores for his game plan. He had 5 or more defensive linemen out on the field on 24 of the Lions' 30 designed rushing plays in this game. And my most impressive guys, I just want to skip to this real quick, is actually the 2 linebackers for Minnesota, Blake Cashman and Eric Wilson, playing in this game. Both of them outstanding in run defense. Cashman with a 92.1 run defense grade, had 16 total tackles and 5 stops, 2 pressures and a sack. Eric Wilson, an 83.2 run defense grade. He had a forced fumble on Jahmyr Gibbs in this game. And what made this work for Minnesota as well is not just that they had 5 defensive linemen out there, is that either one of these guys was operating at any given point as a 6th defensive lineman off the edge. Blake Cashman aligned 11 times off of the edge as an outside linebacker standing up there off the edge. Eric Wilson 23 times. So what you saw in this game essentially was just against an injured offensive line that was missing 2 starters for the Lions. They were going to create one-on-one matchups and go with a heavy line and not allow the Lions to get into those double teams that they love so much. So you would often see not just a 5-man front, but really a 6-man front with 6 defensive linemen, with one of these linebackers acting as that 6th guy, and the Lions just had no answer. They could not break through the first level, only 68 rushing yards on the day, and once again, all of the pressure was on Jared Goff to win this football game, and Minnesota was perfectly comfortable with that, and the Lions with another loss when they had under 100 rushing yards.
Yeah, I agree. I knew that you would bring up that point because you have all year long. You've been pointing out the fact that if the Lions can't run the ball, it gets really difficult for them. I just think the effort and the focus from this team, it was, well, I don't want to say effort. I hate questioning guys' effort, but like the focus from this team just was not there. They've had 8 total turnovers entering the game. They've had 6 now versus Minnesota specifically. They had 4 fumbles in this game. They had 4 fumbles lost, and they had 2 interceptions. 6 turnovers forced against the Minnesota Vikings. And if you go back to earlier in the season, they had another turnover against the Vikings. So an overwhelming amount of their turnovers this year have come against the Vikings, but you're nearly doubling up your season turnover total against one team in 1 week. You're just never going to win football games like that. This is a Lions offense that used to look so potent and explosive, and that's what we're used to seeing with this team. And 3.1 yards per play. Their overall team blocking grade, you mentioned they're beat up along the offensive line, but 53.2. This is not the Lions team that we have seen over the last 3 to 4 years. And maybe it's just unfair to even keep bringing that up. But I think that when you look at the Lions this year, very unlucky with injuries, unfortunately, like I feel like they have been over the last couple of seasons. But there's going to be a lot of hard look in the mirror conversations. I think that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes are really going to have to take an honest look at this roster and see, where a lot of these guys are at, because it has to look so different than it did this year. And the worry to me is you had a team that was still fighting for the playoffs. They still had a small chance, but they still had a chance to win the playoffs. If they lost this game against Minnesota, it was over, and it is over. And I just felt like this is not the detailed, determined Lions team, motivated Lions team that I feel like we've seen over the last 3 seasons. And that's what worries me is Dan Campbell had that quote where he was talking about their loss in the NFC Championship, and he goes, this might have been our only shot. And he was being honest, and I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. But I think that when you have a team that is in a winning window for 3-4 seasons, that's normally all you get. Right? The Patriots are a complete anomaly. Even with the Chiefs have been very good for a long time, but obviously we're even seeing this year. There's only so much that you can overcome because there's going to be so much, turnover with your coaching staff, turnover with your roster. It's just natural with guys getting older, guys retiring, guys taking a step back, rookies now getting second contracts. Are they on your team? Do they leave in free agency? There's so much that goes on. And I was very shocked to see how undisciplined and it felt like unfocused this Lions team was, because I feel like that has not been the case since Dan Campbell really got this team towards their winning ways. So it just looked like a very different Detroit Lions team to me. Now that they're not in the playoffs, I think they're going to have a good hard look at the roster and just the entire situation of where they are in that winning window. Are they going to lean a little bit more into, hey, let's get a mini reset here. Let's adjust the team a little bit more than people maybe would think that we're going to? Or do they still feel like, hey, no, we are in the winning window. Let's power through up to next year. Or is it the other side of things? So they go, hey, that was sort of our winning window. I don't want to say hard reset, but let's get a major reset in a lot of different ways. So very curious to see what conclusion this Lions team comes to as they miss the playoffs this year. You talked about 2 linebackers who were fantastic. I'll shout out Andrew Van Ginkel as well, who remains just such a impactful veteran presence here for this team. Harrison Smith as well. The veterans really showing up in this Flores defense. And then my most disappointing was just Jared Goff in this game. 50.1 passing grade under pressure and just a 51.7 passing grade overall. So it wasn't even just hey, Brian Flores brings a lot of pressure. He brings a lot of blitzes, guys on the line of scrimmage, and Goff struggled under pressure. He just struggled overall. You had the fumbles, the interceptions, all of that. It was a tough night for Jared Goff in this one, and a tough one to end your postseason hopes on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when you talk about the Lions rebuilding, you really have to talk about this offensive line and where this is going, right? Obviously, Penei Sewell is going to be a mainstay. You've got some young guys in the interior, but what's the fate of Taylor Decker? What are we doing on the inside with that third spot, or even finding a way to improve it? And here's, to me, what sums it up, Trevor. Through Week 10, they had the 4th highest graded offensive line in the league. Since Week 11, they are 27th in PFF grade, okay, on the offensive line. So they've got to fix that. That's always been the heart and soul of their team since they've started, getting good over here the last 3 or 4 years. I think that's really the group that they need to look at first. Once they fix that offensive line, they can get back to dominating the way that we're used to seeing. But right now, that is not the case. They're not physical enough up front.
Ravens and the Packers. Ravens take care of business here for this next game. They win 41-24 was the final score. Even though they lost the game, Green Bay does clinch a playoff spot. They are going to be in the 7th seed now that the Detroit Lions have been eliminated. Top 5 graded players for the Baltimore Ravens, who because of this win and the Steelers' loss, showdown for the AFC North, baby, coming up in Week 18. You love to see that. Derrick Henry, top of the list. Highest graded player with a 90.0. Well, I shouldn't sell Travis Jones short. He was also tied with a 90.0. Dalton actually wrote this graphic, so I'm going to ask him in a second, hey, why'd you put Derrick Henry number 1? What do you got against Travis Jones? Edge rusher Draymond Jones is number 3 here with an 82.3. Tight end Mark Andrews is 77.5. Wide receiver Zay Flowers is 77.4. And then Tyler Huntley in this game filling in for Lamar Jackson, an 82.0. On Green Bay side of things, wide receiver Christian Watson with a 90.7. Wide receiver Romeo Dobbs, an 82.6. Edge rusher Lucas Van Ness with an 80.6. Offensive tackle Jordan Morgan, a 79.7. Linebacker Adrian Cooper, a 67.3, but Malik Willis, he just said after the game, he's like, hey, every time I go out there, I'm potentially interviewing, if you will, auditioning for a potential starting job somewhere else. 95.6 overall PFF grade. I know he had that shoulder injury that he went through, and he wasn't able to finish the game for them on that final drive. But, man, Malik Willis has looked good this season when he has filled in for the Green Bay Packers. And so, Dalton, your stat that told the story. But first of all, what do you got against Travis Jones, man? Why's Travis Jones get number 2 instead of Derrick Henry?
Tell you what, next time. Well, I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that part in a second. Really, why we could split them. But you know what? Next time I'll remember. If I get two guys with the exact same, I'll give you the old tie for first graphic. How's that sound?
There you go. Yeah.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
But
like
you know, listen. The Ravens' run game, though, was really in the spotlight this entire way. As a team, all right, here's all the season highs they set as a team in this game. 89.5 rushing grade. 53 carries, 307 yards, 192 of them after contact, 4 touchdowns, 22 first downs on the ground in this game for Baltimore, 9 missed tackles forced. And one thing that sticks out to me, you've mentioned this in past episodes with the Ravens going to more gap scheme runs, run in power, get behind the strong side, the tight ends, the fullbacks, okay? In this game, with a lead blocker, generally that means big 300-pound Patrick Ricard at fullback. 34 carries, 205 yards, 3 touchdowns. They essentially said, not only is it hard enough to tackle Derrick Henry in cold weather, but you got to go through one of the best blocking tight ends in the league in Charlie Kolar. You got to get over a big 320-pound pulling guard, and then you got to get through Patrick Ricard, the big 300-pound fullback, and then you have to tackle Derrick Henry. So it's really right now maybe the hardest task in football in cold weather, both getting to Derrick Henry and then bringing him down. And then the most outstanding, I know you're saying it's a little biased towards the offensive guys here, but how could it not be Derrick Henry, right? 85.7 rushing grade, 36 carries. You just don't see this anymore. He is not a normal running back. 36 carries. He might be the only back in the league that can handle that sort of workload. 216 yards, 4 touchdowns, 146 yards after contact. And credit to him, Trevor, you know why he gets first place over Travis Jones here. He's now 10th all-time in rushing yards and 4th all-time in rushing touchdowns. Derrick Henry with one of his patented legacy games here. Just unbelievable the way that he carried the Ravens back into postseason contention, and I'm sure they'll be expecting him to do more of the same next week against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I tweeted this out after the game. I mean, when you look at Derrick Henry and his career just in the game of football, I don't have his Pee-wee stats, off the top of my head. I didn't call his parents to get those, but he had over 12,000 yards in high school, in his 4-year high school career. He had over 2,000 yards in one season at Alabama, but 3,500 rushing yards in 3 seasons when he was at Alabama with the Heisman Trophy. He now has over 12,500 rushing yards in the NFL. You mentioned that is top 10 all time. And he just had the game that he did about to be 32 years old. I mean, he's 32 years old, I think, next week. And he did this. He got 36 carries in week 17. We're not talking about starting the season fresh. He's got fresh legs. Week 3, week 17. Simply put, this is one of the best football players to ever play the sport. Ever, regardless of position. Derrick Henry is unbelievable. He is a legend of the game. And this game was just, it's one that we will look back on. And when you talk about Derrick Henry's greatness at the position, when you talk about him and put his name up there with some of the best that have ever played the game at the pro level, as we should, so many people are going to point to this game and be like, look what this dude did when he was 32 years old. Well, almost 32 years old. That's the type of performance that I think that we're talking about here. The stat that told the story for me is one that you already mentioned. 22 first downs on the ground. That's the type of team that this team wants to be. You mentioned that I've talked about it over the last couple of weeks, trying to be more of a power rushing team. And I think through the first half of the season, the issue was they didn't really trust their guards to be consistent enough to run between the tackles and run a lot of power in those man and gap scheme concepts. And so they're like, okay, well, let's try to do that a little bit more, but let's try to put a lead blocker out there. You mentioned Patrick Ricard, who I can't remember who said this on the broadcast, but they were like, oh yeah, he's 300, like they got a 300-pound fullback in there. I'm like, Patrick Ricard's like 300 pounds. There's no way he's 300 pounds. And you take one look at him, you go, yeah, guy might be 300 pounds. So you mentioned, you talked about being able to run as a power rushing team. And I think at the beginning of the season, they wanted to just be sort of this duo between the tackles. That's our power north to south run scheme. That's what we want to do. They have since had to adjust, and they're like, okay, well, we're not having as much success running behind our interior guys as we want to. So now they're pulling guys outside. Now they've got lead blockers at tight end. Now they got lead blockers at fullback that they're leaning a lot more into. And now they're still able to be a power running downhill team, but in a different way. You're getting around the guard issue that they have had this season. So the Ravens are playing good football. I'm excited to see them against the Steelers next week. My most impressive, I'll go with Travis Jones because I don't hate him. I'll give him a shout out here. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. 90.0 overall, as we already mentioned. 97.8 run defense grade. 83.0 pass rushing grade. I think for the Ravens, a big issue for them this year not only has been their lack of the ability to be consistent in the run game, which I just talked about, but it's also the defensive line, which has really struggled. We've highlighted the lack of pass rush that this team has had overall, but really just without Nnamdi Madubuike in the middle, they have missed that anchor in which everything on their defensive line revolves around. And Travis Jones has grown into a player that I don't want to say he's exactly like Nnamdi Madubuike yet, but they now lean on him as the center of whatever they're doing on that defensive line. And he is consistently rewarding him. And so he was very impressive in this game. He's been impressive the second half of the season. Most disappointing for me is just the Packers' injuries all around. Jordan Love obviously not in this game. Micah Parsons obviously not in this game. Malik Willis gets hurt in this game and he's not able to come back in, although it's late. It's a shoulder injury that he was dealing with from a couple of weeks back when he got power drived into the ground there. Not saying that it was malicious or anything. It's just the game of football. It is what it is. Josh Jacobs doesn't play as much as he could have in this game because of injury. So the Packers have a Super Bowl caliber type of roster when they are fully healthy, but they're not fully healthy. And unfortunately, timing and luck sometimes goes into how far you go in the postseason. And I think that that's just a big bummer for the Packers because they are a really talented football team. They're just really beat up right now. They only got 1 week until that postseason starts, and we know that they're not getting the 1 seed, so they're going to be playing a wild card weekend. So just tough, and that's a disappointing part. But most disappointing, most impressive, anything else from you on this one?
No, I think the only other thing I'd say, the two quarterbacks, both of them were really, really good. Malik Willis tried his damnedest to keep his team in the game despite all the defensive miscues there in the run game. And then, look, Tyler Huntley, I think if you talk about we're not sure if Lamar Jackson's going to play next week in Pittsburgh, they can win with Tyler Huntley as their quarterback. He was really good in this game. Obviously, the stats not as flashy as Malik Willis's, but he made the throws that he needed to. He took off running when he needed to, and I think he has shown time and again for this Ravens team across multiple years that when they need him to step up and make some plays, he's able to do that. So I just want to commend the two quarterbacks for the way they played as well.
Pro Bowler
Tyler Huntley. There's a reason he made the Pro Bowl. That is true.
Can't forget about it. Let's talk about the team that the Ravens are facing in Week 18 on Sunday Night Football, the final game of Week 18, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the reason why this game has all the drama that it does is because the Steelers were not able to take care of business against the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland wins 13-6. There we go, Tyler, our producer backstage. I can hear him whooping it up from here all the way in Charlotte. I really can, getting the win here. Let's look at the top 5 graded players that we have for the Cleveland Browns. Quarterback Tyson Campbell with a 90.1. Quarterback Denzel Ward, an 82.9. I'll talk about Denzel Ward a little bit more in a sec. Linebacker Devin Bush with an 81.0. Wide receiver Jerry Jeudy, 75.2. Safety Grant Delpit, a 72.6. Shadur Sanders in this one, a 52.2 overall grade. On Pittsburgh's side of things, safety Chuck Clark was their top graded player with an 82.4. Edge rusher Alex Highsmith, an 80.4. Offensive guard Mason McCormick, a 73.9. Cornerback Joey Porter Jr., a 73.7. Cornerback Asante Samuel Jr., new kid on the block there, 69.9. And then Aaron Rodgers in this game, a 54.5 overall grade. Stats that told the story, Dalton.
To me, I mean, there's so many ways you could go about this with this Pittsburgh passing game against this defense without DK Metcalf and then eventually without Darnell Washington, who broke his arm in this game. I would assume he's not playing next week. The Pittsburgh Steelers were 3 for 18 on 3rd and 4th down, combined a 49.9 team offensive grade on those 18 reps, 0 for 7 on 3rd and 4th down in the 4th quarter. You could just see it in obvious passing situations against one of the best defenses in football. They had nobody that could get open, and their wide receiving core, look, now it looks even worse because it's a suspension and something self-inflicted for DK Metcalf, but this is what it would have looked like if he was suspended, if he turned an ankle, if he broke his hand, if anything like that. This has been a problem all year as you look at the Steelers, and the tight ends are a good group, obviously, and that gets a little thinner without Washington, but you look at this wide receiving unit and you go, Who else? Who else other than Metcalf can make a play? And in this game, nobody could do it, especially against a team that runs more man coverage than any other team in football as they're trying to avoid Myles Garrett and the elite pass rush and everything going on here with Cleveland. The Browns were able to turn this into a slugfest because the Steelers did not have DK Metcalf and they did not have any answers on 3rd and 4th down. When Aaron Rodgers needed to have an answer on the outside, the Steelers just did not have one, and their offense completely shut down.
Myles Garrett was chipped on had 27 plays this week where he was chipped, I think. The tape is hilarious. I don't know if I would go as far to say, like Myles said after the game, that they were focused more on Myles not getting the sack record than actually winning the game. Even though the setup of the offensive line and the pass protection sort of would lead you to believe that could have been the case, Pittsburgh has basically been doing this the entire season, right? Super low average depth of target. The ball's coming out immediately from Aaron Rodgers' hands. So it wasn't just totally a Myles Garrett thing. This is how Pittsburgh wants to play their game. But I think to your point, and I agree completely, like to me, the stat that told the story is Pittsburgh's targets in this game. 16 targets between Scotty Miller and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. All due respect to both of those people. Professional athletes playing in the NFL, starting on Sundays. If you have 16 of your targets going to those two guys, there's just not a lot of other options that I'm going to say that you're going to have the advantage, especially against a very talented defense and a very talented secondary like the one that the Cleveland Browns have. So to me, like that's truly the stat that told the story. The fact that you're giving 16 targets to those guys means that you don't have better options. And we have talked about this. What is this Steelers team without DK Metcalf? If you could shut down DK Metcalf, they really don't have a lot of other options. But the Steelers have made it work this year because either you're single covering DK Metcalf and they feel good about giving him those one-on-one opportunities and he's normally been able to produce this season, or you're doubling or just spending extra time, extra eyeballs on DK Metcalf, and that's when Aaron Rodgers has been very comfortable this season saying, okay, we're going to now use him as a decoy to really be able to pull secondary and just overall coverage defenders one way to one side of the field. I am perfectly okay with dumping the ball off to my running backs, as we've talked about how the Pittsburgh Steelers trail only the San Francisco 49ers in targets to running backs this season. That has been able to work for them to the tune of an above 500 record. It clearly does not work without DK Metcalf. Like when you take that away and you say, okay, now everybody else out there is able to have single coverage on them, there's not a lot of space. There's not a lot of space manipulation that you can have via the play calling or the play design or pre-snap adjustments that Aaron Rodgers can do to be able to find running backs in space and give them the ability to get yards after catch. It just doesn't work with DK Metcalf. So, and I think the most disappointing in this is, I'll kind of wrap that up into it, Pat Freiermuth, who you would kind of think would be that next high-impact guy for them. Yeah, he finished the game with, he had 5 targets. I can't remember what his final stat line was. 5 targets, 3 catches, 63 yards. So he leads the team in receiving yards. Dalton, he had one target before the fourth quarter. Get this guy involved. Like, it was like, oh, okay, well, the rest of the stuff didn't work. Now we very much have to go to Pat Freiermuth. How is he not an earlier option for you? How are you not going to him? And maybe the Browns just did a really good job taking him away, but that's where I lose faith in the Steelers team to be any sort of team to make noise in the playoffs or even get there by beating the Ravens next week. I have much more faith in what I have seen even recently through the struggles of what the Ravens are than where the Steelers are right now, especially because DK Metcalf is not going to be in that game. So that was my stat that told the story and a little bit of a most disappointing there. Anything else on that, or give me your most impressive in this game?
I think just on the other side of the matchup, right, when you talk about the Browns playing all this man-to-man coverage, and the fun part is we're each taking one of these cornerbacks. I'll go with the guy they traded for from Jacksonville. Tyson Campbell was awesome in this game. 4 tackles, 2 stops, a 90 coverage grade in this game. He was targeted 7 times and allowed 3 catches for just 5 yards and had a pass breakup. Tyson Campbell on one side was fantastic, and I know you have a guy who really came through in the clutch on your side here on the other side of the cornerback room.
Yeah, I mean, Denzel Ward was fantastic in this game. He had an 82.6 overall coverage grade, 2 forced incompletions with less than 30 seconds to go on the goal line. They went to Marquez Valdez-Scantling 3 straight times. Denzel Ward was on him in man coverage, and on 2 of those plays, he forced an incompletion, and obviously we know the Steelers did not convert at all. So it was when you have man coverage corners, when you're really good, you don't often get challenged a lot, right? It's like the other team knows, okay, well, you're guarding this receiver. Let's not throw it that way. The Steelers were like, we don't care. And Aaron Rodgers was very clearly like, I don't care. I'm going to throw it to this dude, and I'm going to play the numbers game of if you give me 3 opportunities to target MVS in the end zone, I think we're going to come down with it at least one time because that's all they needed. Ward locked him down all 3 times. It was great to see a highly talented man coverage defender not only get challenged, but also be able to step up to it. Obviously, if you're a Steelers fan, you didn't love it, but as a fan of the game, neutral fan of the game, I really loved it. We got to talk about the Seahawks and the Panthers next. We're going to talk about sort of what happened around the NFC South and what that means for Week 18 coming up. But before we get to that, we've got a lot of new cool stuff with the PFF player prop tool, and we got a video highlighting a lot of that stuff. Check it out. We'll be back after the break.
Everyone's got takes. Numbers have truth. And the truth is, most people are betting with emotion. Sportsbooks feed on it. TikTok gurus sell it. The hype machine runs on it. That's how you lose. PFF is different. You're betting with winning data. The same data trusted by all 32 NFL teams and the sharpest minds in the game. PFF betting tools take every prop, every matchup, every angle, and run them through our custom models. Built on the best football data in the world. What comes back is your edge. Simple, sharp, and built to win. Want to go deeper? PFF puts a pro-level analytics department in your hands, giving you the same insights teams use to find every advantage. Build your game plan with matchup analysis. Project every snap, every matchup, and every edge before kickoff. Because the smartest plays start long before Sunday. Hit rates show how a player performs against their prop and against defenses built the same way. It's the data that gives you real confidence in every pick. Next, Key Insights translates PFF data into the story behind every matchup, giving you the why that powers your bets. From coverage schemes to defensive looks, it's the context that turns raw numbers into winning decisions. When you're ready to take action, filter through every prop on the market and focus on the opportunities that matter, by game, matchup, or value. Then, shop for the best available line in your area and tap your book of choice to place the bet instantly. Everyone's got takes, but now you've got truth. Bet with data, win with PFF.
You guys can check out the PFF player prop tool and so much more over at PFF.com when you have that PFF Plus subscription to see all that good stuff unlocked. And like we said at the top of the show, Holiday 30, get you 30% off that PFF Plus subscription. So go check it out. Seahawks and the Panthers. Seahawks win this game 27-10. And if the Panthers would have won this game because the Miami Dolphins defeated the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they would be NFC South champions already. But because both of those teams lost, it sets up a pretty good showdown here on Week 18. But let's talk about the Seahawks and Panthers game. Top 5 graded players on Seattle's side of things as they are still fighting for that number 1 overall seed in the NFC. Safety Julian Love with a 92.2 overall grade. Running back Zach Charbonnet with a 90.7. Edge rusher DeMarcus Lawrence with a 90.1. Safety Ty Okada with a 80.6. Wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba with a 70.4. Sam Darnold in this game, a 56.5. And then on Carolina's side of things, cornerback Mike Jackson with a 92.0. Always fun when you get a good game against a team that you used to play for. Edge rusher DJ Wanham with a 79.8. Defensive tackle Derek Brown at 75.4. Offensive tackle Taylor Moton with a 74.0. And then offensive tackle Ike Ekwonu with a 70.2. Bryce Young in this game, a 54.2. Dalton, that's actually where I want to start, is with Bryce Young. And you and I have talked about Bryce over the last 4 or 5 weeks. And the Panthers are a team that has just been so different week to week. I mean, whether it's game plan-wise, execution-wise, which players are showing up, which players they're leaning on, they have just been so up and down every single week. And I think that's why they're one of the toughest teams to sort of figure out. When we looked at this team versus the Rams and their big upset over the Los Angeles Rams, and then when we looked at this team down the stretch of when they are playing well, you and I identified their willingness to be aggressive with Bryce Young. And sometimes they are and sometimes they're not. But we have talked about the fact that on the games that they are not willing to be aggressive early, put the ball in Bryce Young's hands and attempt some difficult passes on first down to set the tone, a lot of times they just can't keep up with the good teams that they were playing on their schedule. I think this was another game where they failed to do that. When you look at Bryce Young in this game, 54 total passing yards. Okay, that number speaks for itself. But when you go a little bit deeper here, they only had 2 passing attempts this game, whole game, of 15 or more yards. So much was underneath. And I think that how Seattle was playing them goes a long way into this. But specifically, I wanted to look at first down because you did a great job bringing that up a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's a very important statistic for Carolina when it comes to their wins and losses. Dalton, on first down in this game, Bryce Young had a negative 0.2 average depth of target. So whenever they even put the ball in his hands, he didn't throw it deep down the field. He didn't even throw it past the line of scrimmage on average. Now, when you contrast that with the Rams game, when they had that massive upset against Los Angeles, what was it, 6 weeks ago or so? 9.8 average depth of target when Bryce Young was passing on first down. That's not even in the same galaxy of a game plan that you have there. And I'm sure Mike Macdonald, who's one of the best defensive minds in the NFL, saw that tape, has seen where Carolina plays well, knows how they needed to defeat him. And they probably had a lot of guys who were deeper in coverage to limit that. But it's got to be better than negative 0.2 average depth of target. You're just not going to win football games, especially against teams that have more talent than you. And that was the case with Carolina. It's not that Carolina couldn't have won this game. They've beaten some really good teams this season, but they've had the game plan and they've been aggressive enough to do it. And I just don't think they had an aggressive enough game plan against Seattle to beat a team that is that talented.
Yeah, this is just kind of what Carolina does. Trevor, they have alternated wins and losses since week 7. They're inconsistent. It's why they're 8.
Congratulations to Carolina on their division title then coming up in week.
There we go. If all trends hold like they always do, they will win this division next week. And then there's also the funky scenario where they'll win the division anyway if the Falcons win both of their games, which is just would be so fitting to get a 3-way tie for 8 and 9 and basically just get Carolina out of a hat there. But anyway, look, I'm with you. I've said it all year. I've said it since before the season. The 2 keys to Carolina's season are their quarterback play and their run defense. In this game, Bryce Young, a 48.6 passing grade, and their run defense, a 53.9 run defense grade. The Panthers are 6-2 when their passing grade as a team, there's been 1 or 2 Andy Dalton starts in there, when their passing grade as a team is above a 60. Just serviceable. That's all we need is serviceable, and a lot of those games are a lot better than that. 2-6 when that's under 60. When the Panthers run defense grade is above a 62. Serviceable. That's all I need. They're 4-2, and when it's under that, they're 4-6. It's those 2 things. It's those 2 things that were always going to be the difference in their season, and honestly, it's those 2 factors right there, their quarterback and their run defense, that I think are going to decide the game against Tampa Bay in Tampa on Saturday night. I don't think it's any different. Those are the 2 factors that had to improve the most for this team to make the playoffs. We have 1 more week to find out if they're going to be able to do that.
Okay. Most impressive and most disappointing? I guess I'll start. JSN in the fourth quarter I was most impressive with him because it just feels as though he's inevitable, right? I mean, like, very quiet day from JSN for the first 3 quarters, and then you go to the fourth quarter, 3 targets, 3 catches, 78.6 receiving grade, 2 massive first down catches that he had, and it was just like, it's just like this dude is so inevitable. It's so hard to stop him for an entire game, and the Panthers were close, and then the fourth quarter came around, and he was just able to work his magic. So he was the most impressive for me, and then I kind of mentioned just the Panthers game plan. I felt like they they weren't ready to seize this moment against this team, and they weren't ready to play as fearless as they needed to win this ball game. I think the game plan was something that I was disappointed with, and how that lack of aggression was there. But what about you? What was your most impressive in this game?
I'll go with Seattle's highest graded player, the safety, Julian Love, and they've had so many contributors on defense this season. This time it was his turn to shine. 6 tackles, 3 stops, a 90 coverage grade, and I think you could argue the biggest play of this game was his interception in the third quarter. Seattle had just scored, made it 10-3. Few plays later, Bryce Young throws a ball down the sideline, a little bit behind Tetero McMillan. Love intercepts it, gives Seattle a short field. They go up 17-3. Just one of many contributors to this defense. It feels like it's somebody different every week. So the veteran safety there gets a lot of credit. And then most disappointing to me, it is Bryce Young, right? And I think next week, I should say Saturday, this week against Tampa Bay, this is a career-defining moment. If he flops in this game against the Buccaneers after playing so well against them the first time in Week 16, I think then we start to have real questions about Carolina's quarterback situation. I think this is the game that is going to define the next couple years of his career.
So so let me get this straight here for the NFC South. The idea is that they're playing at 4:30 on Saturday, which is hilarious. So we have this almost winner-take-all type of a game here between these teams. But if the Falcons win on Monday Night Football against the Los Angeles Rams, and then if the Falcons also win next week at home against the New Orleans Saints, that could potentially push a 3-way tie for the division. If the Buccaneers win and the Panthers obviously lose that game, you will have 3 teams at 8-9. But if that happens, then Carolina makes the playoffs. So if Tampa wins on Saturday at 4:30, that means that they will go to 8-9. Carolina will be 8-9, and they win the tiebreaker over Atlanta. So in theory, they are in. But there's more drama because if the Falcons win on Monday Night Football tonight, when we're recording this, then we won't officially know who wins the NFC South until after that 1 p.m. game on Sunday when they face the Saints, because if the Falcons win again, then all of a sudden Carolina is the one that wins the 3-way tiebreaker at 8-9.
Correct.
I believe that's how it's set up, correct?
That is correct. The Bucs are rooting for the Rams to take care of business tonight. If the Rams win tonight, then Panthers-Bucs is winner take all. Yeah.
Winner take all. Yes.
And the Falcons cannot win the division. It doesn't matter for them in the standings whether they tie, but that's where we're at now.
To be honest with you, I want more chaos. I want the Falcons to beat the Rams on Monday Night Football. Like, set up the ultimate chaos, as much chaos as possible for the NFC South, because that's what the people need going into the final weekend here. So let's talk about the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers, the reason why we're in this situation is because they lost to Quinn Ewers and the Miami Dolphins. Top 5 graded players that we had for the Miami Dolphins in this game, in which Miami won 20-17, by the way. Jordan Brooks, their linebacker, 89.9 overall grade at number 1 on the list. Defensive tackle Zach Seiler with an 81.8. Offensive tackle Austin Jackson at 78.1. Offensive guard Cole Strange a 76.8. And then edge rusher Bradley Chubb with a 76.3 to round things out. Quinn Ewers in this one, a 47.7 overall grade. On Tampa's side of things, edge rusher Yaya Diaby played great in this one, a 90.0 overall grade. Cornerback Jacob Parrish with an 88.7. Offensive tackle Luke Gedeke with a 76.2. Defensive back Christian Izzian with a 76.0. Wide receiver Chris Godwin a 75.4. And then Baker Mayfield a 57.4 overall grade. Stats have told the story, Dalton. What do you got?
Trevor, I probably don't need to tell you this twice because we've talked about the struggles of this team for 2 months now. The Bucs offense is just broken. It's just completely broken, and I watched this tape, and I watched the game yesterday, and I watched it back this morning, and I have no idea what they're trying to accomplish, right? You watch so many good offensive teams, right? And it's okay, we want to run outside zone and they get to play action. We want to throw the ball outside the numbers. We want to, hit the middle of the field as often as we can. We are a heavy screen. I have no idea what the Bucs are trying to accomplish offensively. Officially, they ran 63 plays yesterday in a game that was relatively close. I know they were down 10 for a while, but they still, that's still 10 points with a lot of time left. You could still run the ball. They ran 63 plays. They called a pass on 50 of them. Okay? 5 designed runs after the first quarter in this game. Baker Mayfield, 55 passing grade, 3 turnover-worthy plays, 1 for 7 with 2 interceptions on the deep ball. This team early in the season became way too dependent on hitting home runs. And basically after the first 5 weeks, teams have taken that away, and they've had no answer. And the last couple years under Dave Canales, under Liam Cohen as their offensive coordinator, the one thing I think that made them a little bit different was they had other answers. When Baker Mayfield wanted to sling it downfield, but the defense wouldn't let him, they had other answers. They had the run game going. They had a lot of yards after catch. They understood how to use their weapons on the outside and manufacture offense. This team right now has no idea how to manufacture any offense. And it's too much like it was early in the season, too reliant on Baker Mayfield to just hit home runs down the field. And even when they're dropping back to throw the football, 1, there's no deception in this offense at all. And 2, everything takes too long. And especially when you're playing a game when you don't have your all-world left tackle Tristan Wirfs, you can't wait for all those vertical routes to get open, especially against the Dolphins using all the zone coverage and sitting back waiting for it. There is just, I don't see a lick of identity in this offense. I don't know if they're going to find enough next week to beat Carolina and win this division at 8-9 and just scratch their way to the postseason again. But to me, I watch this offense play to play, and I mean this, I don't know what they're trying to accomplish. I don't know what they're trying to do. I don't know what the goals are. There's no creating of explosive plays. They are just going out there, and it feels like they're almost guessing as far as what they need to do offensively. It's not a good look right now, and when you only score 17 points, and one of those touchdowns was very late, and one of them was the first drive of the game against this Dolphins team, it's a bad look. It is a really bad look, and just abandoning the run game, too reliant on the deep ball. There's too many problems right now with this Bucs offense, on top of the fact that Baker Mayfield especially just isn't playing well.
Yeah, I think the reason why this offense is the way that it is because Baker is struggling. Baker Mayfield is bottom 5 in the NFL among all qualifying quarterbacks at uncatchable, inaccurate pass percentage, at turnovers, or at turnover-worthy plays, which he has 26 of, which leads the NFL, and he's bottom 5 in turnover-worthy play percentage of his total plays. You won't win with that, especially when you're trying to be more of a pass-heavy offense than a rushing offense. You're putting the ball in the hands of a quarterback that cannot be consistent for you. And unfortunately, that's the way that it is. Mayfield was unbelievable through the first 6 weeks of the season, and they have been trying to recapture that magic the whole year. And I know some guys have been in and out of the lineup. We've talked about the injuries that Tampa has had, but Baker Mayfield is why they are where they are, unfortunately. I think on both sides of the coin, right? They started the year 6-2. Why? Because Mayfield was unbelievable. They're now sitting here at 7-9 and barely hanging on to playoff life. Why? Because Baker Mayfield has been one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL for the better part of 2 months. That's just the way that it is. There's no consistency and no identity in this offense because when they try to pass the football, he's not consistent enough for them. It's not even just the big plays. I mean, he is missing from 0 to 9 yards, intermediate 10 to 19, 20 plus. I mean, he's just not good right now. And that's why it's hard to have faith in this team because they're not running the ball. And they're not even willingly running the ball. And I think that there's a little bit too. I think Bucky's still hurt, and I think that he is not 100%. He's back and he's wanting to be back because, when he was on IR, they talked about how it was tough for him, not just physically, but also mentally because he had never really been this hurt before in his life. And, not being able to go out there and play with his teammates and just have the game of football was really tough on him mentally. And so when they had the ability to get him off of IR, I think that it was good for him to be out there. And obviously, I think that he is the most talented back that they have. But I'm watching him week in and week out. He's not 100% either. Like, I'd tell you that Bucky looks like he's 70% right now. But they're trying to put him out there. So that's maybe why they're not running the football, is that they know that Bucky is not even close to 100%. So they're putting the ball in Baker Mayfield's hands more because, like you said, they're sort of trying to recapture that magic that they had at the beginning of the year, and it's just not there for them. I don't know who's favored in the game on the early line for Carolina.
I want to say it's Tampa by 3, I think.
I would
just
assume that it's
team.
Tampa by something close to 3 because it's at home. It's in Tampa, and Carolina played as poorly as they did against the Seattle Seahawks. But all the memes are true about the NFC South and how like somebody's got to win the NFC South. Like you're watching them just sort of crawl to the very end there, but that's kind of how it feels like with these two teams. To be honest with you, if there was a round robin tournament right now between all 4 teams in the NFC South and the winner went to the playoffs, I'd pick the Saints.
Yep. They're playing the most consistently the best football among them over the last 6 or 7 weeks. Yeah, absolutely, it would be the Saints.
No question. And their quarterback is playing the best. And we'll get to Tyler Shuck here in a second. But anyways, I think the turnover battle told the story in this game. 3 turnovers for the Buccaneers, no turnovers for the Miami Dolphins. Even beyond some of the coverage busts and the missed opportunities and all that, like it's the turnovers. You can't have that big of a negative turnover differential when you're as inefficient as you are on offense for the Buccaneers. Most impressive is Jordan Brooks. I felt like he was all over the place. He's been fantastic for Miami this season. And most disappointing was just the Bucs run game and just the lack of identity I feel like this offense has.
Agreed. Most impressive for me, I'll give it to Bradley Chubb. The Dolphins don't get to the quarterback often, but he really made it count when he did. 4 pressures, 2 sacks, including a strip sack late in the game that really put this thing away. An 82.6 pass rush grade on the day. And look, if the Dolphins could get more of that consistent pass rush production out of their defensive line, they'd be feeling a lot better about their season. But this was a really good game for Bradley Chubb, the veteran, especially taking advantage of Tristan Wirfs not playing in this one.
Texans and the Chargers. Houston wins this game 20-16. Houston clinched a playoff berth, and they do still have a chance to win the division. I believe they need the Jags to lose next week, and they obviously have to win. And then I believe if that happens, they get the division, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so it's that simple. It's sort of hey, go take care of your business, and then you got to hope a little bit. And, of course, Jacksonville could take care of business themselves. If they win that division. And Jacksonville still with an outside chance at the 1 seed?
They need Denver and New England to lose. If they get themselves in a 3-way tie, they will be the top seed. Yeah.
It was always a long shot for them, but here we are 1 week left in the season, and if they win and those other teams lose, like you mentioned, then they still have a chance to get that 1 seed. And wow, the road through the AFC could go through Jacksonville, which is pretty incredible to say. Let's really focus on this game, though. Houston, they won the game, so let's look at their top 5 graded players. Edge rusher Will Anderson, as he often is, at the very top of the list with an 87.0. Safety Kayvon Wallace, an 81.1. Linebacker Henry To'o with a 79.1. Wide receiver Nico Collins with a 77.8. And then wide receiver Jaden Higgins, a 77.0. CJ Stroud in this game, a 67.6 overall grade. On the Chargers side of things, the ageless one, Khalil Mack with an elite 90.9 overall grade. Safety Elijah Molden with an 87.5. Defensive tackle Jamari Caldwell with a 77.7. Wide receiver Quentin Johnston, now becoming one of the best deep threat wide receivers in the league. I don't know, some are saying, Dalton. 76.1. Offensive guard Zion Johnson with a 69.4. And Justin Herbert with a 69.0. Stat that told the story.
I think we just have to talk about this game, to me, in the context of where a spot when you're playing the Houston Texans that you don't want to be in. Trevor, if you told me that you have to pick what team being down 14-0 would you least want to face in the NFL, it would be the Houston Texans, right? And, you're going to go into the offensive
Brother, if it's 0-0 first and 10 starting the game, the defense, I probably don't.
That might be the case as well, but especially this is the worst team in the league you could be in obvious passing situations against because for as much as they have CJ Stroud, they have Nico Collins, they have Derek Stingley, they have Kamari Lassiter, the heart and soul and identity and superpower of this team is for their front four to just dominate for 60 minutes, and that's what they did in this game, especially with the luxury of an early 14-0 lead. You mentioned it. Will Anderson, as always, at the very top of that list, one of the best players in football. Daniil Hunter with 7 pressures and a sack. Derek Barnett with 2 sacks. Danico Autry with 4 pressures and a sack. A guy like Tommy Togiai in the middle, forcing cutbacks in the run game, making life a lot harder in the run game for the Chargers. I mean, Sheldon Rankins, and they just have so many guys up front. And again, they don't just control the game. They dominate this football game. Justin Herbert under pressure 47% of the time. When Herbert was clean, he was really good, and he's had to work around this offensive line all year. But this is not a team you can fall behind against and expect to win ball games because this pass rush is constantly breathing down your neck. And honestly, this was one of the best games in run defense that I've seen this unit play all season. To me, that's just the entire story. You look at that defensive line. 72.4 pass rush grade, which is for them kind of middle of the road. Honestly, 5 sacks with 4 more negated by penalties. They could have had 9 sacks in this game. And then in the run game, when you look at design runs for the Chargers, they had -2 yards before contact. That just speaks to your front four in the biggest mismatch on either side in this game, because the Chargers have arguably the worst offensive line in football right now. The front four dominated this game, and the only thing they needed was the Texans to get them a lead, and they could just take over from there. That's all this was. After they got up 14-0, was basically the Texans were burning the clock on offense and allowing their defensive line to dominate this offensive line and to bother Justin Herbert all day. It's the one thing that makes you believe they can beat anybody in the NFL is Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, and that just deep group of defensive linemen that beat you in the run game and as pass rushers.
The Texans defense is a defense that really showcases the value of having one-on-one winners, because defense is so much of the chemistry and cohesiveness side of the ball, right? You can win on offense, and I'm oversimplifying it, but like if you have a great quarterback and a great wide receiver, you can win. Like you can win some play. You could force feed it to that player if they've just got to beat one defensive back, and they've got to be able to get open, and the quarterback is locked in on him. Like think about like when Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are really locked in. Like in the games that T. Higgins isn't there, and at the games that the run game's not going on well, the Bengals can still win football games because you have those two guys. On defense, it's not very much like that. You have to have cohesiveness and pressure and organized pressure up front. You have to have the linebackers communicating well, holding the structure of the defense together well. You have to have the secondary, like especially even if you're not playing man, like if you're playing zone, I mean, you've got to have the chemistry, like everything, the timing down between passing guys off from zone to zone, and okay, where does my own zone end and where does this guy's zone begin? Like playing defense is all 11 guys coming together. When you have a defense like the Texans, I'm not saying that they don't play together, but you have a one-on-one winner in Will Anderson Jr. You have a one-on-one winner in Danielle Hunter. You have a one-on-one winner in Derek Stingley Jr. on the outside. You have another one-on-one winner on the outside in Kamari Lassiter. And the fact that they have those 4 players that can all individually win their matchup anytime they have one-on-one opportunities, the value of that is unbelievable, because football is so much about a numbers game. You're trying to have more blockers than they have defenders in the run game. You're trying to have more receivers than they have defensive backs on one side of the field. Like you're trying to always get a numbers up advantage. And when you have 1-1, and yet you have a numbers advantage, when it is 1 versus 1, the value of that is unbelievable, especially when you have 4 players at these specific spots, 2 one-on-one edge rush winners and 2 one-on-one cornerback winners when it comes to being able to play man coverage. That is what gives you the flexibility to do so many other things. Be as aggressive as you possibly want. Have 1 high safety, 2 high safeties, rotating safeties, inverted coverages, blitzing linebackers up the A and B gaps, like whatever it is, you have that sort of flexibility to be as aggressive as you want because you have those talented players in those opportunities. So that's, to me, what is so impressive about how Houston has built their team, is that they've focused on those 4 one-on-one winners on the defensive side of the ball. My staff that told the story is actually the Chargers defense, on the Chargers defensive side of things. Dalton, before week 17, they had given up 2 total touchdowns on passes of 20 or more yards. The most yards that they have ever given up on targets of 20 or more yards in a single game was 87. Okay, that was in any game before week 17. In week 17, they gave up a doubling 2 touchdowns on passes of 20 or more yards, and they gave up 118 passing yards, which is the most that they have given up in a single game this season on passes of 20 or more yards. Jesse Minter has built one of the defenses that is best in this league at defending and deterring, I should say, deep passes. And they messed up against the Texans. And C.J. Stroud took advantage of it, and they were right there to be able to do it. And in a 4-point game, To me, that's what made all the difference in the world. So I think that the Chargers not being themselves when it comes to deep passing really got in the way of them winning this game.
This was, again, a team that they did not want to fall behind. I just wanted to check and see who had the other 2 deep touchdowns. One was Bo Nix way back in, I think that was week 2 or 3, and one was Dak Prescott actually last week. So that's 3 in the past 2 weeks that they've given up after 1 before week 16. No, I mean, it was a huge difference in this game for the Texans to be able to hit those early home runs against a defense that just doesn't give them up, right? As disciplined in zone coverage as they are every single week. The Texans getting ahead 14-0 was the story of this game. And then you have the defense just taking over from there, because it's extremely hard to come back from 2 scores down on this team. So credit to their defense, credit to Miko Ryans and the game plan that they put together. Nick Caley, the game plan he put together in the first quarter, because the final 3 quarters, the Chargers defense played great. They only gave up 6 points, but getting ahead and allowing the defense for the Texans to control the game, that was really the difference.
Let's see. Most impressive, I mentioned Quentin Johnson as a deep receiver. I mean, he's been fantastic. He's got over 200 yards over the last 2 weeks. I think utilizing him as the deep threat in this offense is really unlocking what he's able to do. He's really been able to cut down on the drops. He's been pretty good in contested catch situations as well. So it's great to see Quentin Johnson playing well as a deep threat receiver. Most disappointing to me is just the Chargers offensive line overall. 48.0 blocking grade in this one. Mekhi Becton, Bobby Hart, like their offensive line grades, those guys were 40s or below when it comes to overall blocking grade. It's just I think you added these notes here. The Chargers finished this week with a 39.2 team run blocking grade. That would be the worst in PFF history. Yikes.
That's for the season.
The
worst, and the previous record was the Chargers 2 years ago with somewhere around a 40. Yeah, I mean, they just can't run. I mean, the problem is with Justin Herbert and with this defense, you want to believe there is as much a Super Bowl contender as any team in the AFC, but this offensive line is really the thing preventing that. And they need, obviously, next year for Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater to come back and be healthy, and they'll have one of the best pairs of tackles in the league. And then they got to fix this interior, even in free agency or in the draft, obviously. I can't, with that offensive line as bad as it is, as injured as it is, I can't look at this Chargers team as a true Super Bowl contender. If they find a way to make it, then boy, all credit to Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman, everything they've figured out with this offense, because there's even flashes when Herbert is clean where they look outstanding, but you just can't have your quarterback under pressure almost half the time every week. It's not going to work in the playoffs against Houston and Denver and these other really good defenses they're going to have to play.
Anything else on this game?
Nope, that's it for me. All good.
All right. I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball at our production people, because we've got folks in the chat who are yelling for us to get to the Saints game. So I would like to do the Saints game next, just because there are so many people that are very fired up. We got some passionate NFC South fans here on this channel this year, whether it's the Panthers or the Saints or the Bucs when they were good, like it's, and I can understand it. We just talked about a couple of minutes ago how if there was a round robin tournament this weekend and it was like, all right, winner of that gets to represent the NFC South when it comes to the playoffs, we'd be picking the Saints. And they defeated the Tennessee Titans this past week, 34-26 is the final score. Top 5 graded players that we had for the New Orleans Saints in this game. Tight end Juwan Johnson with a 90.1 overall grade. Wide receiver Chris Olave with an 87.5. Running back Audric Estime, NFLSE great, with an 82.9. Linebacker Danny Stutzman, the rookie, with an 82.1. Edge rusher Chase Young, a 78.8. Tyler Shuck in this game, a 76.6. I'll talk a little bit more about him in a second. On Tennessee's side of things, linebacker Cedric Gray, he's had some really good games this season. An elite 91.6. So is this guy. Defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons, having a career best year this year, with a 91.5 overall grade. Defensive tackle T'Vondre Sweat right behind him with an 83.9. Offensive guard Peter Skoronski, an 82.3, and then offensive tackle Dan Moore Jr. with an 80.2. Cam Ward in this game, a 46.2. Some insane plays, and I mean that both good and bad, here in this game. What was your stat that told the story, Dalton?
Look, man, the Saints, they were down 20-10 at halftime. I believe they did not score an offensive touchdown in the first half of this game. Their one touchdown was the Chase Young strip sack that I'll get to a little bit later. Kind of pulled a Jamal Adams on that play and just took it right out of Cam Ward's hands. But the Saints in the second half of this game, how about these for offensive numbers? A 92.4 offensive grade, 10.5 yards per play in the second half of this game, 9 explosive plays compared compared to just 3 for Tennessee. You just look at the development of Tyler Shough over the second half of this season and what he's done essentially with not much of a run game. It was a little bit better in this game with Audric Estime in the backfield getting most of the carries, but the chemistry is developing with Chris Olave, the big game out of Juwan Johnson, and then just Kellen Moore just going, listen, we're not playing for anything. We're not tanking for the number 1 overall pick because we have a quarterback, and we're playing a team with a really vulnerable secondary. Tyler, let's go see if you can just come back and win a game on the road. And they put up 24 points in the second half of this game. Just outstanding. I mean, you look at really the Saints, and outside of one drive where I believe it was, who was it that fumbled here at the end of it? Dante Pettis fumbled as they were driving down into Tennessee's red zone, and then you had a 3-and-out at the very end. But they had opportunities to score on 5 of their 6 drives in the second half of this game. If Tyler Shuck's going to continue to play like this, and you have to love, and this was his best trait to me at Louisville, the confidence throwing the ball outside the numbers, especially.
Yes.
Those to me were his best throws in college, and really Kellen Moore, I think, has taken advantage of that. It's really something he took advantage of with Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia last year, throwing those vertical routes outside the numbers, getting those one-on-one matchups. You're finding these two really find they're finding a nice chemistry, and I think they need one more receiver to try to find a complement to Chris Olave, and they got to find, something more of a run game, a consistent run game. But if they add some balance to this offense, this team's really got a long-term picture coming into focus here. And I think Tyler Shough, the way he played in the second half of this game, just outstanding stuff to create a double-digit comeback against a team at halftime in Tennessee that was feeling really good about themselves.
I agree, man. I've been so impressed with what Tyler Shough has been able to do, and I was very skeptical about him just overall as a draft prospect with the age, how long he had been in college, multiple different systems. Okay, he had a big arm, but I was still worried about some of the turnover or the throws that I had seen from him even that last year at Louisville. But we heard that the NFL was very in on him just because of the overall arm talent, and man, what a great spot he has landed in with Kellen Moore, like you mentioned, who likes to design things to get those outside throws. And I agree with you, in this game, incredibly confident throwing the ball deep down the field, outside the numbers and to the sideline. It's been awesome to see. They had an 8.1 yards per play average. That was my stat that told the story here, because that's just an incredibly potent offense anytime that you're doing something like that. Shough in this game, we mentioned, what was it, a 76.6 overall grade, but an 80.4 passing grade in this game. More than 290 passing yards with 5 big-time throws and only 1 turnover-worthy play in each of the last 3 games. Well, the turnover-worthy plays weren't. He had over 290 passing yards in each of the last 3 games, and then total through those 3 games, 5 big-time throws and only 1 turnover-worthy play. As I was, looking at his profile over at PFF.com, I was looking at the passing grades, and I just didn't realize how consistent he has been this season. And you go back and you watch some of these games and you look at some of these numbers. He has 6 single-game passing grades above 70 this season. He's only got 1 below a 60.0. And remember, the PFF scale, a 60.0 is neutral. Like 60.0 is like, yeah, you did your job today, some good, some bad, one didn't heavily outweigh the other. It was a decent day at the office. A 60 grade is like a neutral grade as a starter. He's had 1 game that he has played in his rookie year with a passing grade below 60. And he's got 6 games above 70. So impressed with what this dude's been able to do and the confidence he is playing with. It's really fun to watch a young quarterback pair with a head coach and offensive play caller who really gets what they are trying to do, who leans into their strengths, and that's exactly what we're seeing from the New Orleans Saints. On the other side of things, the guy who was picked number 1 overall in this past draft class, Ward has to fix the fumbles. They were an issue for him when he was in college, and they have been a major issue for him here in the NFL. He leads the NFL in total fumbles lost this season with 11, and he had 5 turnover-worthy plays in this game. 2 of them were fumbles. Now, one of them was the Chase Young, he just ripped it right out from him and scored the touchdown. But the more concerning one was the one that came in the fourth quarter where he's avoiding pressure, he's keeping the play alive, and you love that. You don't want to coach that out of Cam Ward, absolutely. But then it's this play where I can't remember if it was defender spun him around or he was just spinning around and the ball just like flies out of his hands. And I can't remember what his hand size was when he measured at the combine, but it just feels like that happens a lot. Like the ball's like really far out away from his body and it just falls out of his hands. And That's the stuff that is annoying, that's backbreaking sometimes. And so as Ward gets better, because I think he's going to get better as a quarterback. Like, I think the kid's got all the talent in the world, and when he's playing confidently, he's got some crazy throws. He even hit some crazy throws in this game. If you don't eliminate these fumbles, if you don't at the very least cut them in half from what we've seen this season, you're just going to have so many moments this year where it's so much good and then maybe one bad play that actually outweighs all the good that you're doing. So moving forward, Cam has to clean up the fumble issues that he's had this rookie season.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's got to figure out, and he had to figure this out in college before he got to Miami. He was the same way. He's got to figure out when it can't just be all on him, when he can't just carry the team. Trevor, his average time to throw in this game was 4 seconds. I don't know. I don't know when I've seen that. I believe I saw a stat from Next Gen Stats that it's the highest in a game they've ever tracked. I got to see if we've ever had anybody else go through a whole game with an average time to throw of 4 seconds. But that's the idea. I mean, Cam's got to play within structure more often. I think he's going to go through the same process, and we'll see who the Titans hire and bring in as a head coach and an offensive play caller to get him to play within structure more often, because you just can't play that fast and loose style all the time. And you mentioned it, the football's oftentimes low and away from him, and he's fumbling. And he had, I think, what was the number I told you? Was it 45 fumbles in his college career, somewhere around there, maybe even 50? Just too loose.
45 is insane.
Too loose with the football late in the play. I mean, he's always been like that. And the idea, the reason he got taken number 1 was the improvement in structure, right? He could still make the hero plays, but he was a lot better in structure at Miami. He's going to have to find that over the next couple of years in Tennessee.
Yeah, and I just looked it up. 9-inch hands from him, that's 8th percentile for quarterbacks in the NFL. So it checks out that he has much smaller hands than a regular pro quarterback does. So when that ball is far away from his frame and it's not tucked, he can be gripping it as hard as he wants, but when your fingers and your hand is smaller, you just have less of the ball that you have control over. And when you're spinning all over the place and you got your momentum going one way, the ball's just going to fall out of your hands too often. And like you said, this was an issue for him in college. Has to figure it out in the NFL. He cannot be fumbling the football like this. It's going to be backbreaking. The Jags and the Colts. Wait, was there anybody else you want to shout out?
I mean, Chase Young, especially for the play. 8 pressures,
sure, yeah.
2 sacks, but especially for that strip sack touchdown, like I said, basically pulled the Jamal Adams and just took the ball right out of Cam Ward's hands. That was one reason the Saints stayed in this game, because it was 13-3. It was ugly offensively early. They just needed a spark, and it felt like that gave it to them. But Chase Young, this Saints pass rush has gotten a lot better since Young has got healthy, and he was outstanding in this game.
Jags and the Colts, the next game that we're talking about here. Jacksonville wins this one, eliminates the Colts from the playoffs, which is crazy to say given the fact that the Colts started the year 7-1. Jacksonville wins this one, and as we said a little bit earlier in the show, still have a chance at the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. 23-17 was the final score here. Top 5 graded players that we had for Jacksonville. Cornerback Monteric Brown with a 77.8. Linebacker Devin Lloyd a 77.7. Wide receiver Parker Washington, what a player he's been for them this season. 76.8. Wide receiver Jacoby Myers, a 73.8. Offensive guard Ezra Cleveland, a 72.9. Trevor Lawrence in this game, an 81.1. On Indianapolis' side of things, linebacker Jermaine Pratt with a 91.8. Tight end Mo Alley Cox scored his first touchdown of the season, 86.4. Defensive tackle Adetomiwa Adebawore with a 79.3. Cornerback Sauce Gardner, a 75.7. And offensive tackle Jalen Travis, a 74.3. Phillip Rivers in this one might have been his last game in the NFL, because now that they are eliminated, they're just going to give Riley Leonard a shot. We believe they're just going to give Riley Leonard a shot next week. But in this final game, a 55.4 overall grade. Stat told the story here, Dalton.
So for me, the Jags took some early punches in this game, down 10-0. They had a fumble that gave the Colts a free possession there, and they ended up scoring on that. And they really needed to stay in this game while their offense was figuring some things out and just not taking advantage of some red zone opportunities, especially. But their defense certainly kept them in it. After giving up 10 points and allowing 107 net total yards on the first 2 drives, the rest of the game, the Colts ran 33 plays, only got 92 net yards, and they only scored 7 points. And that 7 points came after a big-time Ashton Dulin kick return that gave them a really good field position in Jacksonville territory. So I think a big thing for me was Jacksonville's defense kind of picking up their offense, playing complementary football, only allowed 44 yards in the fourth quarter of this game while getting 2 interceptions, one of them on that Hail Mary that you mentioned there. And a big thing, like I'm going to talk about with the Colts, I've been talking about it every week, they only ran for 69 yards. even in a game they were ahead 10-0. They could not find the run game. 0-7 now when they have under 90 rushing yards in a game. Jacksonville did a great job of just keeping this within reach. They had to scratch and claw on the offensive side. Trevor Lawrence had to bring him back from an early deficit, but I give a lot of credit to Anthony Campanile and this defense for really keeping the Jags within reach in this one and not letting it get away from them early.
My stat that told the story was a Phillip Rivers stat, because for as much as Rivers did great things in this game, and obviously it was closer than I think a lot of people thought it was going to be, given how the Jags had played over the last month, and I mean that complimentary. Rivers had a 2.20 time to throw in this game. Incredibly fast. The ball was coming out of his hands incredibly quick. And yet, Dalton, it was still an 8.9 average depth of target. So he almost had a 10-yard average depth of target in this game while only holding on to the ball for a 2.20 time to throw average. To me, that's Tua ball. And unfortunately, as we've seen with Tua himself, it's an unsustainable way to play. Like, you can have some spots where you are snapping the football. It is the defense is what you think it's going to be post snap in the first 2 seconds, and you are letting that ball go, and you're trying to throw it in the intermediate and deep levels while trying to get rid of it very quickly. But we have also seen the other side of things, and there's a reason why Tua was also leading the NFL in turnover-worthy plays before he got benched. Because when you are trying to push the ball deep down the field, yet you are getting rid of it before 2.5 seconds, you're just inviting all sorts of disaster. Because if the defense moves even slightly from what you thought they were going to do pre-snap to post-snap, you could be putting the ball in all sorts of harm's way when you're not controlling it enough to be able to scan the field and actually fully understand where the defense is going. Now, Rivers kind of has to play this way, right? He doesn't have the mobility, and he doesn't have the overall arm strength to be able to fire it in between windows, 2.5, 3 seconds after the ball is snapped. So this is sort of how he is forced to play. I'm not saying that he should have played a different way, but I am saying that this style of ball, it only has so much time before you really will get burned. And I felt like that's what happened in this game. They had the good moments. They also had the times where that luck kind of ran out. It's a passing strategy that it's just not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. I don't even think for a full game, let alone as a strategy that you could have for weeks and weeks on end, like the Dolphins have had with Tua over the last couple of years. So I think that was my stat that told the story. Is it was always going to be hard for the Colts to hang on, with that being the case with Rivers. But my most impressive in this one, Jermaine Pratt. He had that 91.2 overall grade like we saw there, 92.7 coverage grade, 2 targets, 1 catch allowed, just 1 passing yard allowed when he was in coverage. And he had that interception in the end zone, which was incredibly impressive. It was a route combination where they were facing quarters. I believe they were facing corners, and the outside wide receiver is just running a post where he's just trying to clear out that side of the end zone, that front pylon and that right side of the end zone. And you're pairing that with an out and up route, so that the timing of it is, you're basically asking Jermaine Pratt, like, you have to keep up with this receiver. I can't remember who it was actually that he was throwing to, but you have to keep up with this receiver, whether it was a tight end or a wide receiver, not only on the out route, but also when they cut up the field and it's another break on the route, you got to keep up with them there. And not only did Jermaine Pratt do that, he did that so well that he even had the time to get his head around and intercept that football on a pass that was a little bit short there from Trevor Lawrence. So super impressive play just from him there. And then the overall grade, you see an impressive day from him. And then my most disappointing, I'll just finish up here, it's just the Colts season. To be eliminated before week 18 and you started 7-1, it's just a bummer. And we talked about this when we did the Fix Your Franchise for the Indianapolis Colts over at the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. This team has been so insanely unlucky since they, at the trade deadline, went, we're all in. Since they pushed all their chips on the middle of the table, basically everything has gone wrong. Everything has gone wrong with this team. Injuries, lack of execution, ball not bouncing their way. Just kind of sucks. Just kind of sucks for what was a pretty special year, a very efficient year, a very fun year for them in the first half of the season, for it to come crashing down and them get eliminated even before week 18 begins.
No, I completely agree with you. The Colts, I mean, it's going to be an interesting offseason when you talk about their options at quarterback. Do they take a mid-round guy on day 2? Do they sign a veteran? Is it Kyler Murray? Is it Tua? Is it Malik Willis? Who could that be for them starting at quarterback next year? Is it Anthony Richardson in-house if he gets healthy, obviously, and starts playing a little bit better? I mean, we have no idea what this Colts quarterback situation is going to look like. My most impressive guy in this game, just want to shout out real quick, Trevor, there's not many guys in the league right now playing better than Parker Washington is at receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars. 8 more catches for 116 yards in this game. Let me throw something at you real quick. And his increased usage in the second half of the season has made this offense a lot better, along with adding Jacoby Myers and getting Brian Thomas healthy and all that. I'm going to list you the guys who have a higher receiving grade with at least 20 targets since Week 9 than Parker Washington. You ready? Puka Nacua, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Drake London, Nico Collins. That's the whole list. That's the list of guys with a higher.
And then Parker Washington, obviously, is the top 5 wide receivers in the NFL.
Well, of course. I mean, it should have been obvious the whole time, really. But you look at the number of plays that he's making, especially after the after the catch element that he adds to this offense, and obviously he shows off the dynamic ability as their punt returner as well. But Parker Washington is making a huge difference for this team right now. It felt like there were stretches in this game where he was the best player on the field. So I mean, you look at a loaded, all of a sudden, feels like out of nowhere, a loaded Jaguars group of weapons, right? Thomas, Myers, Parker Washington's playing well. Brenton Strange is playing really well, back healthy. You still have Travis Etienne in the backfield. Trevor Lawrence with 2 rushing touchdowns. I mean, they're as dangerous an offense as any team in football right now, and they didn't even play close to their best game in this one. I would be curious to see if they can get firing on all cylinders going into the postseason, but they got one more win to get to win their division. That's going to be a big game next week.
The Denver Broncos traveled to Kansas City and defeated the Kansas City Chiefs. Final score of 20-13 there. Denver clinched the AFC West, and so there will be a new champion at the top of that division now that the Chiefs have been dethroned. Top 5 players that we have for Denver in this game: offensive tackle Mike McGlinchey, who I feel like doesn't get talked about a lot on that offensive line. We're always talking about Quinn Miners and Garrett Bowles, but Mike McGlinchey had a great game, and I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. Defensive tackle Malcolm Roach with an 82.1, offensive guard Quinn Miners with an 80.3, center Alex Forsythe with a 78.0, and then edge rusher Nick Benito a 74.2. Bo Nix in this game an 82.8 overall grade. And then on Kansas City side of things, their rookie corner Noel Williams was their top graded player with an 82.5. Safety Brian Cook a 77.8. Wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster a 73.1. Cornerback Christian Fulton a 71.3. Safety Jaden Hicks a 70.0. And then Chris Oludokin with a 55.3. Starting, of course, because Patrick Mahomes and Gardner Minshew are now out. Sounds told the story, Dalton.
Well, this game was certainly probably closer than Sean Payton would have liked on Christmas night, and playing a tight game with still a very good defense in Kansas City and a struggling offense. I'm sure he didn't want to take this game down to the wire, but at the end of the day, kind of like the Carolina game we had earlier, it's very hard to win a game when you only have 66 passing yards on the night, and that's what the Chiefs had. Kansas City's fewest passing yards in a game since Week 17 of 2012 against the same Denver Broncos. You want to take a guess at what the quarterback matchup was in that game?
Kyle Orton. 2012
Broncos Chiefs.
No, wait. No, this wasn't Tebow, right?
Nope.
Was it? No, okay. Broncos Chiefs. I'm going to be wasting everybody's time. What is it?
You're forgetting 2012 was the first year of Peyton Manning in Denver.
Oh, I thought Manning was the next year. I thought that's what the whole reason why you were asking me that question is because it wouldn't have been Manning. Okay.
Peyton Manning versus, this was the one that got me, versus Brady Quinn. Which I didn't even remember Brady Quinn played for Kansas City, honestly. But I just thought that was fun. Week 17, exactly 13 years ago. Peyton Manning versus Brady Quinn. Brady Quinn threw for like 55 yards in that game or something. It was a bit of a mismatch. It was. But anyway, look, only 2 completions of at least 10 air yards down the field. 0 explosive passes of 15 or more yards. The Chiefs 4 of 11 on third down. The Broncos 11 for 18. And the Chiefs only had the ball for 20 and a half minutes in this game. At the end of the day, and he put up a good effort at the end on the final final drive to get them within about 25 yards or so. But the Chiefs, I mean, they've been struggling on offense anyway all season, but with their third-string quarterback making what is second career start here. First career start, I think it was. This was just not going to happen here against this Denver defense, despite the fact that, again, the Broncos it was a lot closer than they wanted it to be heading into it.
Yeah, to me, the stat that told the story was the Broncos' time of possession in the second half. Broncos had the ball for 19 minutes and 6 seconds, and the Chiefs only had the ball for 8 minutes and 18 seconds before that final drive. So Denver basically controlled the game the way that they wanted to all the way up until the final drive, and they were like, okay, well, after this, it doesn't really matter. So they controlled things as much as they possibly could have there. And I just think that time of possession was really what made the big difference in this one. I thought the Broncos' offensive line was the most impressive in this game, 84.7 overall blocking grade, and the fact that their offensive line is really firing on all cylinders going into Week 18, that's what you love to see. 87.3 team run blocking grade, and then Mike McGlinchey specifically a 93.2 run blocking grade in this one. He had a 0% defeated run blocking percentage, which means that he did not gain a negative play on any of his run blocking reps, which you love to see. Most disappointing for me was Chris Jones. Not only did he have the offsides there at the end of the game that basically just gave it to the Denver Broncos, but he also had a 35.1 run defense grade. I mean, it just was not a very good game for Chris Jones, and they needed him to be all-world and superhuman in order to win this one, and he was not. So he was my most disappointing there in this one. What about you? Most impressive, most disappointing?
Don't really have a most disappointing because, honestly, this is a little bit closer, but this is about how we thought this game would go. Most impressive, I'll give it to Bo Nix, and it's a modest stat line with only 182 passing yards, but Steve Spagnuolo came out and basically said, we talked in the preview about Nix and all the deep balls, the deep shots of 4 big-time throws that he had against the Chiefs the first time. Well, he came out and basically ran a lot of too high and made Nix throw it in front of his defenders and really made him manufacture offense. That was one of the reasons the Chiefs stayed in this game as long as they did really the entire way through. But Nix made the adjustments. 2 big-time throws. One of them was dropped in the end zone by Cortland Sutton. Also 42 rushing yards and a touchdown on the ground. So I think this was a really good learning experience for him to go on the road against what's still a very talented defense, against one of the greatest defensive coordinators ever, and having to really battle and having to punch through an early kind of unlucky interception there that gave the Chiefs their only touchdown of the night. But Bo Nix really battled, and I can appreciate that, maybe even more so than the days we see him gunslinging and making 5 big-time throws and 4 turnover-worthy plays and everything like that. He really had to manage this game, and he did it well.
Patriots-Jets.
Do we have to?
We'll be quick. We'll be quick.
Okay, all right.
Patriots and the Jets, final score 42-10. New England clinched the AFC East here with this big victory. The top 5 graded players that we had for the New England Patriots: wide receiver Stephon Diggs with a 92.3, tight end Hunter Henry with an 88.6, offensive tackle Morgan Moses with an 85.1, edge rusher Anthony Jennings with an 82.1, cornerback Marcus Jones a 76.9, Drake May an elite 90.6 overall grade. On the Jets side of things, running back Breece Hall was their top graded player with an 86.0. Defensive tackle Harrison Phillips an 81.9. Edge rusher Michael Clemens with a 78.9. Defensive tackle Jawan Briggs with a 74.0. Defensive tackle Peyton Page with a 69.5. And then Brady Cook in this game a 33.7 overall grade. South told the story, Dalton.
Trevor, sometimes the word is just scoreboard. The stat that told the story of this game is the score that you see on your screen there. It was 42-10, and it looked even worse than a game that was usually 42-10. The Jets just that's basically honest. I didn't even, as you probably see in the sheet here, I didn't even write any notes down for this game. I watched Drake May's snaps in this game. He scored 6 touchdowns and 6 drives, so that's cool. And I don't think I could stomach more than about 20 plays of the Jets offense. And we're back to the Tom Brady days where it's like, oh, the Patriots exist and the Jets exist and they're on the same football field and it's week 17 and this is how it's going to go. If I had a most disappointing part, it is, look, this defense, they traded Quinn Williams, they traded Sauce Gardner, they traded Michael Carter. It's a bare bones defense talent-wise. I get that. But it even coaching-wise, and they fired Steve Wilkes, their defensive coordinator, a couple weeks ago, they look like they have no idea what they're doing out there. I mean, you talk about Josh McDaniels could send a motion on any given play and dissect the whole coverage and make life real easy for Drake May. Drake May, when he threw a pass with motion, with pre-snap motion, Trevor, he had 15 yards per attempt. Because it's just, okay, we get the matchup we wanted man-to-man, or they didn't come across, and we know it's zone. We know exactly what they're in at all times. And then outside of the occasional run stop, they really don't get much done. I mean, I see plays when Jamie Sherwood somehow is locked man-to-man on Stephon Diggs. What are we doing? The Ramondre Stevenson touchdown. They have Stevenson lined up out wide. He motions into the backfield. Quincy Williams is the player man-to-man on him. They decide to blitz him and have Eric Watts, a 280-pound defensive end, man-to-man on Ramondre Stevenson for basically a walk-in touchdown on a wheel from about 20 yards out. This Jets team is hard to watch. This is as hard to watch a Jets team as I've pretty much ever seen. And, I see other teams that are well out of the race and they're playing hard on defense, and they at least look like they know what they're trying to do. I mean, it would appear the Jets are just trying to tank for one of these quarterbacks. It kind of looks like it, but I mean, this is just a completely different class of football these two teams were playing. It was the scoreboard tells you everything you need to know without having to watch a single snap.
I never really entertained the idea that a college team could beat an NFL team. However, Drake May looked like he was at North Carolina in this game.
Yep.
Drake May looked like it was as easy as could be. And Drake May had the most big-time throws in all of college football in the 2 years that he was a starter when he was at North Carolina. He had elite passing grades because every single week he was just whatever he wanted. He had the arm talent to complete any pass that he wanted. And in this game, that was very much the case once again. He was 19 for 21 in this game, had 256 passing yards, had 5 touchdowns. Dalton, he had a 100% adjusted completion percentage. The 2 incomplete passes that he had in this game, one of them was a drop, and the other one, his arm got hit as he was letting it go. And when we do adjusted completion percentage, that's not Drake May's fault. So if your arm gets hit when you were releasing the ball, we take that out of the completion percentage equation because that's not your fault. Of the passes that he was able to get cleanly off, he was 19 for 19. He was 100% in this game. Everything that he wanted, he got. You mentioned that for the Patriots, this game started touchdown, 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 touchdown. We're halfway through the third quarter at that point. And you haven't even stopped them from getting into the end zone. I don't think that Aaron Glenn's going to get fired. Because I think that one and done coaching just it's a dangerous game to play, it really is. But all of a sudden, those first 5 games in 2026 look very, very, very important. Because if the Jets don't look, I don't want to say completely different, but if the Jets don't look a whole lot better in terms of having an identity and a direction and some sort of progress, he will not make it to week 6. He shouldn't. Again, I am not, the Jets are not a talented team. At the deadline, they very much realized that. They traded away 2 of their most talented players in Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams. They are not a talented football team. I would say almost every single team in the league is more talented than the Jets are. So I'm not sitting here and expecting them to win. But it looks really, really bad right now. And now, unfortunately, it looks so bad that you have to say to yourself, we now have to judge Aaron Glenn off of 5 games that we have at the beginning of next season. And if things don't go well within the first 5 games, I bet they move on pretty quickly. That's how bad it has looked for this team, and that's how bad it looks down the stretch here. So we don't have to spend too much more time than that. I mean, the Patriots are good. My most impressive is the Patriots' entire coaching staff. Mike Vrabel's the favorite to win Coach of the Year. Josh McDaniels and Drake May's chemistry is unbelievable. It's awesome. It's so great to see. You love it when a talented quarterback lands with a great offensive mind like the one that Josh McDaniels is. Is he a great head coach? No. But is he a great offensive mind? Very clearly from what we've seen over the last decade and a half. So that is great. But all of a sudden, yeah, the Jets the Jets' first 5 or 6 games of next year all of a sudden are of pivotal importance for Aaron Glenn, or I don't know if he's going to make it till halfway through the year.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on the Pats coaching staff and Mike Vrabel, because we saw several teams mess around this week, right? You saw the Detroit Lions lose with their season on the line. You saw the Denver Broncos playing a close game against the Chiefs team with no offensive lineman and a third-string quarterback, and the Patriots went into New York and they took care of business. That's exactly what you asked for, and then they got the Bills' loss to go along with it to clinch this division and still have a shot at the 1 seed next week. The Broncos have to play the Chargers. We'll see how many of their guys the Chargers are playing, but that's obviously a winnable game for the Chargers, 50-50 game. And then New England gets to host Miami next week, and they got to feel pretty good about that. So there is still a chance to get this top seed, and what a job it would be if they got that. What a job it already has been done winning this division over a Buffalo team that's obviously always expected to win it.
Before we get on to our next game, our game plan of the week presented by Western and Southern Financial Group, a game plan for your financial future. I'm going to take it back to the New Orleans Saints segment that we did. And what Kellen Moore is doing, designing play concepts for Tyler Shuck to throw it outside the numbers and to the sideline. Dalton, it's a thing of beauty. He has been playing so well when he has been targeting those routes deep down the field, and he has been playing incredibly confident. So that, to me, showcases a phenomenal game plan. Just like every team win starts with a great game plan, your future should too. With life insurance built like a championship roster, Western and Southern helps protect you and your family so you can focus on winning today, knowing that tomorrow is covered. Whether you're just starting out, building your dynasty, or looking to lock in long-term protection, their coverage options are designed to match your game plan. Visit westernsouthern.com/PFF to get your free life quote and start building your financial game plan today. Western and Southern, built to win, backed by over 130 years of helping people protect what matters most. Bills and the Eagles. Not a lot really changed with this game. Both of these teams are in. Both of these teams aren't going to have a chance to get the 1 seed. Eagles don't have a chance at the 1 seed, do they?
No, they could. I was
going to say, I don't think they could get there.
They could get the 2 with a win and a Bears loss next week, or they'll either be the 2 or the 3. And the Bills, it's that 5, 6, 7 mix with Houston and the Chargers. It could be in any order. Yeah.
So these teams are. They're already in the playoffs. They can't get the 1 seed, either of these teams. Philly's already won their division. The Bills can't win theirs. 13-12. Final score here. Thrilling to the very end. Josh Allen comes up a little bit short, or a little too long, I should say. Leading Khalil Shakir a little bit too much in the back of the end zone for a 2-point conversion that could have won them the game there. Top 5 graded players that we had for the Philadelphia Eagles. Linebacker Zach Baldwin with an 86.5. Wide receiver A.J. Brown right behind him with an 84.5. Offensive tackle Jordan Mailata, an 81.6. Edge rusher Jalix Hunt with a 73.3. Defensive tackle Moro Ojomo with a 72.5. And then Jalen Hurts a 68.0. On Buffalo side of things, wide receiver Brandon Cooks an 89.8. Cornerback Teron Johnson with a 74.5. Edge rusher Joey Bosa, 69.2. Offensive tackle Deion Dawkins, a 69.1. Offensive guard David Edwards with a 68.0. And then Josh Allen with a 61.9 overall grade. That told the story, Dalton.
Look, the Bills, the very last throw that basically ended this game, the missed 2-point conversion from Josh Allen as he's trying to hit Khalil Shakir. And first things first, I actually agree with the decision to go for 2 there, especially with the Bills. The Bills are already in the playoffs. I know they don't think of it like this, but the odds of Miami going into New England and winning next week are pretty low. Let's not go to overtime and drag this thing out in an ugly rain game that, you don't want to risk any injury. Josh Allen's already out there playing hurt with a bad foot, so I have no issue going for 2, but it's just the execution in Philadelphia territory was the difference in this game. You had the Josh Allen fumble early in the game. You had a punt from Philadelphia's 44-yard line. Allen was stopped about 2 inches short of the goal line earlier in the second half, and then you had the missed 2-point conversion. And really, it does come down a bit to Josh Allen, right? In the Philadelphia, they run a lot of zone coverages. They really keep you in front. The Bills' wide receivers, for the most part, were struggling to separate. But Josh Allen, in his own territory, all right, before Buffalo crossed midfield, 82.1 passing grade. Love that. In Philadelphia territory, a 37.6 passing grade. Bills just didn't finish drives, right? They were, I believe it was 2 for 3 in the red zone, so the red zone numbers, I couldn't quite just go with that. It was more kind of extended out throughout the entire 50 yards. But Bills had every opportunity to win this game, and they just didn't take advantage of it.
Honestly, the stat that told the story for me, it was on the other side of things, but in a lack of execution way, and that's Philadelphia. I thought Philadelphia was just a better team in this game, but 23% on third down. I mean, them being bad on third down is kind of what kept Buffalo in this one and continued to give them chances. Their 36% on third down is 24th in the NFL this season. Now, how they are in the red zone, 70% in the red zone this season, that's what's making up for this, is when they get into the red area, Philly scores a lot better at a higher rate than every team in the NFL. But it's that between the 20s, third down stuff that really makes me nervous about this team. It just makes me feel like they are still so hot and cold, and it's hard for me to believe that a team that is that hot and cold on the money downs of third down is really going to make a deep playoff run for as talented as the Eagles are. So to me, the stat that told the story is that I feel like Philly should have won this game by even more, and they were able to keep Buffalo in it, unfortunately, because of their lack of execution on third down, which has been an issue for them all year long. Most impressive to me was Jalen Carter, 83.1 pass rush grade, 5 total pressures, 18.3% pass rush win percentage. I mean, he looked like he had the juice in this game. So he was a heavy impact player. Anytime he had one-on-one opportunities, I felt like he was a difference maker for them. And then most disappointing for me is just for as much as the Bills have tried to and have accumulated talent around Josh Allen, we're still sitting here, and it just feels like there's too many times where they go, Josh, save us, please, do something, do the Superman thing. And I just, it's. You talk about being unsustainable. I mean, Josh Allen would have to have an MVP level run in the playoffs at his current, what is on his shoulders, what his current workload is, and how much they depend on him, that percentage of the pie that he has to take. He'd have to play at an MVP level for 4 straight games for them to win a Super Bowl. And I just don't love how much they have to rely on him to just be Superman in order to make things happen.
With most, if not all, of those games now being on the road, especially.
Right.
And now he's got a banged up foot. We're not sure if we're going to see him in Week 18. The Bills just might concede it and go, now, obviously, I would bet the Bills' backups and Mitch Trubisky beat the Jets anyway, but that's a different story for the preview show. As far as the Eagles go, I mean, again, you talk about a missed opportunity for the Bills. The Eagles ran 18 plays in the second half, Trevor, and they netted 16 total yards. They did not complete a pass in the second half, and yet they won the game. I mean, the Bills, they missed every opportunity to win this game, and to me, man, I know Brandon Cooks had the 100-yard game in this one, but if you're sitting here telling me a 32-year-old Brandon Cooks is going to solve the Bills' problems at wide receiver,
that's where I'm at with this team. I agree with you. Yeah.
Between the two big things for me, now they played a good defensive game in this one, especially the second half. They shut it down, the pouring rain, cool. The defense is probably not good enough, right, against some of the elite offenses they could see in the AFC playoffs. And this wide receiver, what reason do the Broncos or the Texans or the Chargers or really any defense have to fear this group of wide receivers? They have none. They don't have any reason to fear this group of wide receivers. The Eagles certainly didn't, and it helped them shut out the Bills for 3 straight quarters. So I think the Bills fundamentally, look, is Allen good enough to carry them all the way? Probably, yeah. It would take a Superman-type run, but how many times are we going to rely on him to do that? Right? And he's had those runs, and they still let him down at times. So I think that's a problem. Most impressive guy for me, give me Zach Bond. Man, when you have a middle linebacker like this who's just, it felt like almost out of nowhere last year, became one of the best linebackers in football. 6 tackles, 4 stops, 87.9 coverage grade. Just flying all over the field, a forced incompletion as well. This guy really has become the leader of their defense right in the middle of it. Didn't have Nakobe Dean next to him, but Jahad Campbell, the rookie, played a really solid game next to him as well. But, man, Zach Bond, the way he puts things together in the middle of this defense is just outstanding.
It's so funny. When he was coming out of Wisconsin, I remember watching Zach Bond, and undersized for an edge rusher, but I was like, no. What he does best is he's an edge rusher. Like he gets after the pass, and like he had a really high pass win percentage, really high pass rush grade, all that kind of stuff. And so when he was struggling early on in the NFL, like when he was with the Saints and everything, it was like, okay, well they didn't really know where to play him. They played him as an off-ball linebacker. Sometimes they played him as an edge, and he was sort of in between these positions. And then he got to Philadelphia, and they're like, no, you're an off-ball linebacker. And even I was, because of how I viewed him coming out of college, I was like, all right, well, this is never going to work. Like, this is a waste. And now he's a top 5 linebacker for the game.
I mean, you have to remember too, for darn near I think maybe 40 years now, Vic Fangio's coached some of the best linebackers of all time. Right? When you talk about, he's coached Ray Lewis, he's coached Patrick Willis, he's coached Navarro Bowman back on those San Fran teams. It feels like everywhere Vic Fangio has been, the linebackers have been outstanding, and I think that's really a huge difference there as Fangio gets with Bond, and it's just like, oh, okay, this works now. This talent with this coach works, man. I mean, to have Fangio as his coach, as a guy trying to figure out that linebacker position, you couldn't ask for any better.
I would agree. The Giants and the Raiders battle for the number 1 overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. The Raiders come away victorious. And by that, I mean that the Giants won this football game. Final score of 34-10. The top 5 graded players that we had for the New York Giants. Safety Dane Belton was their top graded player with a 90.4. Edge rusher Brian Burns a 90.3. Wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson a 78.3. Linebacker Bobby Okereke with a 77.5. And then Austin Schlotzman with their center with a 73.2. Jackson Dart in this game a 76.1. On the Raiders side of things, offensive tackle Stone Forsythe with a 77.7. Cornerback Darian Porter Jr. with a 75.7. Wide receiver Trey Tucker with a 72.9. Cornerback Eric Stokes a 70.7. Safety Lonnie Johnson Jr. with a 70.7. And then Geno Smith in this game, a 51.7 overall grade. Dalton, your stat that told the story here. Obviously, we could talk about this one more from an NFL draft perspective, given the fact that if the Giants would have lost this game, would they have locked up number 1?
I believe they would have clinched it.
I think they would have locked up the number 1 overall pick if they would have lost this game, because even if they win next week and the Raiders would have lost, they would have owned that tiebreaker for the number 1 overall spot there. But instead, now the Giants win, the Raiders now have the number 1 overall pick as it stands today. So what do you think? What was the stat that told the story, and any other big storylines here with this?
As far as the game itself, the Giants were able to run and stop the run. They had their best rushing day since Week 10, 155 rushing yards, most explosive runs since Week 10 as well. I believe it was 6 of them, and their highest EPA per rush of the season. The middle of the year when the Giants were, kind of frisky and winning some ball games, or at least staying close in ball games, it was their run game that was really spurring their success, and ever since Cam Scatterbo got hurt, they hadn't really had that in recent weeks. So this game right here, Devin Singletary, Tyrone Tracy, and Jackson Dart himself, as always, of course, really spurred things in the run game. And then the Raiders only ran for 63 yards in this game, with Ashton Jeanty obviously getting most of that. But the Giants with a season-high 73.3 run defense grade and their fewest yards allowed on the ground this season. That was really, to me, the difference when you watch just the tape of what was obviously a pretty ugly game between two bad teams. One was able to run the ball, one was not.
Geno, to me, has been the big story here for the Raiders and a lot of their struggles, and he struggled again in this game. 3 more turnover-worthy plays this season. That means that Geno is has the 4th most turnover-worthy plays with 22, and he has the 4th worst turnover-worthy play percentage at a 4.2%. That, to me, there have been a lot of parts of this Raiders team that have been disappointing, but to me, it just starts with Geno, who I was a big fan of over the last couple of years when he was with Seattle. Was it perfect from him? No. I mean, he started off He started off the 2023 season really hot. First 8 to 10 games, played really well. Second half of the season, not so great. Started off 2024, beginning of the season, okay, it was very up and down. A lot of turnover-worthy plays to go along with some big-time throws. But then the second half of that 2024 season, he played very well. I liked the idea of bringing him in to be that bridge quarterback for the Raiders, but he hasn't been the bridge quarterback that we've wanted him to be for this team. He has, in fact, been instead one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think that goes into games like the ones we just saw, the record that they currently have. They have the least amount of wins here with 2 wins overall on the season. And to me, it's just that's the stat that told the story, is the way that Geno has struggled, the way that he has put the ball in harm's way. You're not going to win football games like that. And I think that they were hoping that if Geno was going to struggle, they'd be able to lean on Ashton Jeanty, and that absolutely has not been the case. Now, of course, we know that the running game isn't all on the running back's shoulders, but Jeanty hasn't been great just as much as their offensive line hasn't been great, and we just talked about how Geno hasn't either. It just has not been a good offense overall for them. On the other side of things, for the Giants, most impressive to me was Brian Burns. Not just the 1.5 sacks that he had in this game, but you look at some of the pass rush numbers, 4 pressures, 11.3% pass rush win percentage. He wasn't the best pass rusher on this day, but 83.1 run defense grade. I think it just shows how well-rounded this guy is and how talented of a defensive lineman he is. So was impressed with Burns throughout this game. And as the most disappointing, I kind of jokingly, but not jokingly, said that the Giants not tanking harder. I mean, you look at the Raiders. All of a sudden, Brock Bowers is on IR. Okay. Now, all of a sudden, Max Crosby is on IR when he doesn't want to be on IR, and he just played the previous week. Oh, he has a knee injury that needs surgery. Yeah, okay. All right. Sure. Giants didn't tank hard enough. They didn't want it enough, Dalton. That's what it was. John Spytek and the Raiders, they wanted it. Tom Brady, he wants it. And now we're sitting here where the interesting part is that the Raiders play the Chiefs next week. And the Chiefs, as we know, are very bad. And the Raiders haven't had a lot of opportunities to beat the Chiefs over the last 8 years. So there's some players that might want to make sure they stick it to the Chiefs because they haven't been able to over the better part of the last half decade. So it sets things up to be very, very interesting if the Raiders end up winning next week against Kansas City.
Travis Kelce might get 15 to 20 targets in that game also.
Right.
As far as the Raiders go, see the Giants to me, because they already have a quarterback, I'm not really worried about them picking first or second or third. I get the trade bit, but it's like, okay. The Raiders, there's 3 big questions we have to ask. 1, is Pete Carroll going to be the coach? 2, which quarterback do they prefer? Because it sure feels like they're taking a quarterback. And 3, is Max Crosby going to be on this team next year? Because obviously he wanted to play this week, and him sitting has caused a lot of friction there, and obviously this team is a long-term project now. Those 3 questions are going to be the big ones we ask all offseason, but I think they're absolutely taking a quarterback in this year's draft. If it's Fernando Mendoza, if it's Dante Moore, if it's somebody else, we will see. But I think that's where this team is going, and they've got a boatload of money to spend in the offseason. They can try to fix this defense with, maybe get themselves another receiver, maybe somebody like a Brandon Ayuk is a target for them, but they got a lot to figure out for sure, and they've certainly earned that number 1 overall pick.
Anything else on this one before we move on?
Nope.
All right. Cardinals and the Bengals. This one's in Cincinnati. Cincinnati takes care of business 37-14. I was talking with the producers, guys behind the glass last week, and I was like, look, do I think that the Cincinnati Bengals, all in all, are a top 12 team in the NFL? No. But if I'm picking 12 teams that I wouldn't want to play the most right now, you better believe that Cincinnati's in that top 12. And so obviously they're not playing for the postseason, they're not making the postseason, but they're giving us a glimpse, as we have seen before, when this group is fully healthy, what they're able to do. And you can say, oh, they played the Cardinals. Yeah, well, they blew out the Cardinals. And the teams that they've been playing since Joe Burrow has gotten back, they've been able to handle pretty well here. 37-14 was that final score. Top 5 graded players that we had for the Cincinnati Bengals. Offensive guard Dylan Fairchild with an 84.0. Cornerback Dax Hill an 83.1. Linebacker Demetrius Knight an 80.6. Offensive tackle Amarius Mims a 79.3. And then wide receiver Jamar Chase with a 77.7. Joe Burrow in this game an 82.8 overall. On Arizona's side of things, their top graded player was wide receiver Michael Wilson with a 79.0. Linebacker Akeem Davis Gaither with a 75.7. Offensive guard Isaiah Adams with a 73.2. Running back Michael Carter with a 69.4. Linebacker Cody Simon with a 69.0. And then Jacoby Brissett a 60.7. Stats have told the story here, Dalton. What do you got?
It really is. You mentioned it. You wouldn't want to play the Bengals right now. Obviously healthy with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins out there. It's so odd, these last 5 starts for Joe Burrow. They scored 0 a couple weeks ago here in Cincinnati against Baltimore, right? In the other 4 starts, they've scored 32, 34, 37, 45 with a 0 just sandwiched in there, which is just the strangest thing ever. But either way, I'm expecting the confetti to pop somewhere around here, but I'm going to say something that doesn't get said often around these parts. The Bengals' offensive line dominated this game.
They did.
I don't know the last time that's been said. I don't know if those words at this point have ever been uttered, certainly not since I've lived here, but 84.9 overall grade for this offensive line in this game. Dylan Fairchild and Marius Mims really dominant individually. Season high there, only charged with 5 pressures and 1 sack. Joe Burrow with a 92.5 clean pocket passing grade. If you protect him, he's arguably the best quarterback in football. That's how that works. And then 75.8 run blocking grade is their second best of the season. All 5 starters on the offensive line with at least a 67 grade, 4 of them above a 75. Boy, if the Bengals could just bottle this up and get their offensive line to play like this for a whole season, they would feel really good. And it's really been a stretch of their last, 5 or 6 games. Yeah, 6 games. 6 highest graded offensive line in the NFL since Week 12 with the number 1 pass blocking grade. Where has this been for 5 years? I seriously, if they could just keep this going into next season and go, hey, we've got a really good offensive line all of a sudden, then you're right. The Bengals become one of the scariest teams in football. Obviously, the Cardinals dealing with a lot of injuries up front and things like that on the road, tough environment. But, the Bengals in the trenches dominated this game, and we don't get to say that much.
Yeah, the Bengals' overall execution, I think, was what the stat that told the story here. They were 67% on third down, 10 for 15. They were 5 for 5 in the red zone. They have a 91% red zone percentage over the last 3 weeks, as you would expect. That's number 1 in the NFL. And they've been above 43% on third down all year long. That's top 10 in the NFL. You mentioned their offensive line, and I have some more stats there as my most impressive. You mentioned the 84.9 overall team blocking grade. From week 1 to week 7, Dalton, they never had a team blocking grade above 60, which, remember, 60 is neutral. 60 is, okay, everybody's doing their job appropriately. This is a fine, okay game here. They didn't have a single game from week 1 to week 7 with a team blocking grade above a 60. From week 1 to week 11, so you're going 4 more extra weeks, they didn't have a team blocking grade above a 70. From week 12 to week 17, they have had 4 games, not only above 70 as a team, above 75. This team is figuring out how to play on that offensive line. And it's fun to see from Cincinnati. I just wish the year was different because I think the league's a lot more fun when this offense has a chance to play for some hardware. But unfortunately, injuries got the better of them this year, and you just hope that they're able to hit the ground running next year because I do still think that this is a very fun offense when everybody is fully healthy. On the other side of things, my most disappointing is Jonathan Gannon. Cardinals have lost 13 out of the last 14 games that they have played. It doesn't sound like he's getting fired, but you're looking at a situation where this is sort of an obvious because obviously they're going to hire the best offensive coordinator they possibly can. I don't imagine that Drew Petzing is going to be back. Somebody has to be a major scapegoat for this team. And if Jonathan Gannon is not going to get fired, I think it's Drew Petzing who's no longer going to be there. I think they're going to put a lot of time and effort into this offensive hire because I think that this might be a very similar situation to that of Aaron Glenn that we talked about a little bit earlier, where all of a sudden the first 5-6 weeks of the season become very, very, very important for the Arizona Cardinals. You are in a division with 3 teams with unbelievable head coaches that are all going to make the playoffs this year, and all of them at one point looked like they could have been front runners for the number 1 overall seed and potentially even winning the Super Bowl. You have to nail this offensive coordinator hire, not only because we assume that they're probably going to have a new quarterback in next year, and you have to be good there, but if Jonathan Gannon, if the Cardinals start next year 1-4, I think he's gone early. And you have to have somebody that you are comfortable with putting in that interim role and giving them a shot to be a head coach through what would be, the second half of the season, maybe a little bit more than a second half of the way into the season. So if Gannon's going to be back, all eyes are on this offensive coordinator position because whoever it is could very well be the head coach of this team soon into 2026 if things don't go very well for them.
And it feels like the Cardinals, with regard to the quarterback position in the draft, it feels like they're in the most tenuous spot because you have the Raiders picking first, you have the Jets picking third, and then the Cardinals picking fifth. Mm-hmm. Let's just say, look, we don't know what Dante Moore is doing. We don't know yet what Ty Simpson is doing out of Alabama. But can they afford to wait? This is really the team that I would look for to trade up, say maybe with the Giants at number 2 to go, hey,
right,
we got to get ahead of the Jets. We got to get somebody. Do they mortgage their future? Do they sign a veteran? Do they leave Jacoby Brissett in there? Is it Malik Willis? Who is it going to be at quarterback for this team? They've got a huge question to answer with that, because Kyler Murray's not going to be there next year. I would be just shocked if he was, considering the way everything's gone down the last couple of years. So, I mean, this is going to be a very interesting team, especially to me with regard to the draft and how they're going to handle that.
I agree. Anything else on this one? Most impressive, most disappointing, anything like that?
Most impressive, I should say. Look, the Bengals, they have a lot to fix on defense, but I do like their cornerback room. Dax Hill, usually it's been DJ Turner this year, but Dax Hill was really good in this game. 84 coverage grade, only allowed 24 yards on 6 targets, 3 forced incompletions. So if nothing else, the Bengals have a little bit of hope in their secondary. They just got to go in this offseason and fix the front seven.
All right, last game, taking it all the way back to the first game of Christmas Day. It was Cowboys at Commanders. Dallas wins this one 30-23 as the final score. Dallas's top 5 graded players. Quinnen Williams, at the top of the list with a 92.4. Edge rusher Jadeveon Clowney with an 83.2. Defensive tackle Kenny Clark at 82.1. Tight end Jake Ferguson with a 76.0. And then Tyler Booker rounded things out at number 5 with a 74.6. Dak Prescott in this game, a 68.7 overall grade. On Washington side of things, linebacker Bobby Wagner with an 87.0, wide receiver Terry McLaurin an 83.7, wide receiver Deebo Samuel a 75.7, linebacker Jordan McGee a 73.8, tight end Ben Sinnott a 73.0, and then Josh Johnson, who started this game for the injured, of course, Jaden Daniels, but also Marcus Mariota. Josh Johnson at a 67.5 overall PFF grade. Stats told the story, Dalton.
How about the Cowboys going 6 for 6 on 4th down in this game?
That'll do it.
The most fourth down.
That'll do it.
The most 4th down conversions in a single game by any team this season. Nobody else has 6. 6 for 6 on 4th down really helped them keep possession here. They had 1 4th down conversion on the first drive, led to a touchdown. They had 3 of them on their second drive that led to a touchdown. 1 more in the fourth quarter that led to a field goal, and then the final quarterback sneak at the very end that really ended this game. Dallas just controlled possession by converting this often. They were 8 for 20 on 3rd down, but 6 for 6 on 4th down will help you hold on to the football for more than 38 minutes in this game. Officially ran 87 plays compared to Washington's 41. I just think Washington did a solid job for the most part outside of the big Kevontae Turpin touchdown. They did a solid job for the most part of keeping Dak Prescott in this passing game in front of them. So the Cowboys obliged, and they said, you know what, we're going to run the football with Malik Davis and with Javonte Williams. Prescott's going to be a little more efficient in the shorter passing game, and they just controlled possession this entire way and controlled the clock the entire way.
Yeah, I think the Dallas run game was the big difference in this one. You know, obviously Javonte, he doesn't play the whole game here, but he had 13 carries for 54 rushing yards. That was a 4.2 yards per carry average. You'll take that for sure. And then when Malik Davis gets in the game, 20 carries, 103 rushing yards, 5.2 yards per carry average. So if you're going to take 4.2, you know you're going to take 5.2 there. They had 10 first downs rushing. I mean, it's just they were able to run the football the way that they wanted to. And when we went through this game in the preview show last Tuesday, this is I brought up this exact same thing, that the Cowboys were able to run the ball really well against Washington the last time out, and I knew that they would be looking to do that again, and they were having a lot of success there no matter who was in the backfield. So I think that was the big time stat that told the story, is that they were able to run the ball the way that they wanted to in this game. And then on the other side of things, honestly, my most impressive was Bill Krosky-Merritt and how he played. 11 carries, 105 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, and Dalton, does it just not look different when he's out there? I mean, he is the most athletic threat out of the backfield that they have. And I'm pretty shocked that they haven't leaned more into him this year. I know they've wanted to be a running back by committee, and okay, maybe they don't think that he's the between the tackles runners that they want to be able to give the ball to and a high workload, but this dude, he's got the juice. He is the most athletic player that you have out of the backfield. He gives you the potential to turn a 2-yard carry into a 12-yard carry and an 8-yard carry into an 80-yard carry, right? I mean, like, he just gives you that home run potential where the rest of the backs don't. And when you have that lower potential of a player, it's always harder to give them carries, because you know that if a play gets blocked up perfectly, sometimes the ball carrier doesn't have that athleticism to make the most of it. Krosky-Merritt absolutely does. And I think he should be this team's RB1 going into next season. You know, depending on who they might bring in or draft, we'll see. But I think this dude has done enough to show that he is their most dangerous threat out of the backfield, and we saw it here in Week 17.
Yeah, I think you'll still see a second back brought in, whether that's in free agency or in the draft, to complement him. I still like even Chris Rodriguez in kind of a part-time role, but you're right, Krosky Merritt needs to be the top guy heading into next year. I'm going to shout out another rookie on the Dallas side. How about the way Tyler Booker's playing for this team? He was their highest-graded offensive lineman in this game, and since Week 8, Trevor, he has the 15th highest grade among qualified guards. You know, we questioned at the time, we want to take Tyler Booker 12th overall. That's kind of a big swing there, but you know what? He looks like he's on that track to being one of the best guards in football. He's played really well since he's gotten healthy the second half of the season, so just want to shout him out for dominating in the trenches once again, especially as a run blocker. He's been a perfect fit in Brian Schottenheimer's system.
Cowboys' offensive line overall has been really, really consistent throughout the second half of this season. So anything else on this one?
Nothing else here. Merry Christmas.
There we go. We're wrapping it up. That was Week 17. We got 1 week left to go, people. A lot on the line. Very excited about it. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you're not already so you don't miss the preview show coming up at the same time, 1 p.m. on Wednesday, where we're going to preview every single thing that is on the line for all of the Week 18 games. We'll tell you what time they're at, how you get to watch them, all that great stuff. If you guys don't have a PFF Plus subscription, now you can get one for 30% off using the promo code HOLIDAY30. You can see all of the grades, all of the numbers, and so much more than we talked about here on this show. You can see the player prop tool, the fully unlocked mock draft simulator, the free agency tools once we get to that part of the offseason. So make sure you get that 30% off right now because it's not going to be around forever. Holiday 30 is how you get that 30% off. If you're watching the show and you'd love to sponsor what we're doing here at PFF, we'd love to talk to you about it. Sales@pff.com. Best way to get in contact with us there. Excited for the next couple of days as we're building out this show. One more full league, all 32 preview show that we have coming up on Wednesday. We'd love to see you guys there in the chat. Shout out to everybody who was able to catch this one live, 1 p.m. Eastern time. That's when it's happening. For everybody behind the glass, for Dalton Wasserman, I'm Trevor Sikkema saying we will see you guys then for one more preview show on Wednesday. See you guys then. Appreciate you watching.